So you want me to just say Brighton High School? Oh, national anthem. Okay. Members, we have a special treat today. We're going to have Brighton High School sing the national anthem. Fantastic job. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. This morning, the House will come to order. This morning, the morning pledge will be said by Nicole Reno from Conifer High School in Conifer, Colorado, guest of Representative Froelich.
Please join me while we sing the Pledge of Allegiance. Not sing, but say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Randall, please call the roll.
Representatives Arndt, Baisley, Beckman, Benavides, Byrd, Bockenfeld, Buck, Buckner, Buenteo. Excused. Caravale, Carver, Catlin, Coleman, Cutter, Duran, Escar, Exum, Froelich, Galindo, Garnett, Garnett, Geithner, Gonzalez Gutierrez, Gray, Hanson, Harrod, excused, Hooten, Humphrey, Jackson, Marquez Lewis, Kennedy, Hip, Kraftarp, Landgraf, Larson, Lewis, Liston, Fontaine, McCluskey. McKean. McLaughlin. Melton. Michelson Janae. Mullica. Neville. Pelton. Ransom. Rich. Roberts. Sane. Sandridge. Singer. Singer. Sirota. Snyder. Soper. Sullivan. Tipper. Datone. Valdez A. Valdez D. Van Winkle. Weisman. Will. Williams. Wilson. Madam Speaker.
Here, with 63 present and 2 excused, we have a quorum. Representative Pelton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the Journal of Monday, April 22nd, 2019, be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. The motion passes. Announcements and introductions. Representative Bockenfeld.
It's an honor to serve with you, Madam Speaker.
You as well, Representative.
I'm honored today to be the sponsor for the Brighton High School Chorale and Women's Chorale out of Brighton, Colorado, directed by Dory Summers. And they will be singing a couple songs down in the rotunda. And thank you very much for giving them a warm welcome this morning.
Representative Kraft-Thart.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have 2 announcements. First, Business Affairs and Labor Committee, can I have your attention, please? I need to let you know that we've picked up a couple more bills for tomorrow afternoon. In addition to the ones that are in the calendar, we will be hearing Senate Bill 156 and Senate Bill 173. The second announcement I have is, I don't know if you remember a couple weeks ago, but my relative, Peyton Hall, from Northern Kentucky, was here and spent the week with me for spring break, working in my office. And so this is a picture of Peyton. He ran for Future Business Leaders of America, the state reporter. This was the little booth that he had to encourage people to vote for him. And guess what? He won. Isn't that exciting? So thank you all for your influence on him. And he had a great week and really appreciated working with you all.
Representative Landgraf.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, tomorrow is the day, I think, Thursday. Thursday is the day, not tomorrow. Dr. Andrew Monte, an ER physician, will be here to talk about acute cannabis illnesses Thursday, April 25th at 7:30 in room 109 in the basement.
Minority Leader Van Winkle. Assistant Minority Leader Van Winkle.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, members, it is Concrete Day at the Capitol today, so on the southeast quarter of the Capitol grounds at 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., they will be hosting a very lovely barbecue for us. I hope you can all join us. The Governor Polis will be there at 11:30 to address attendees. I hope to see you there.
Representative Valdez. And Ransom.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, tomorrow's Aerospace and Defense Caucus lunch tomorrow from noon to 1. We hope to see you there. It's in the 6th floor of the conference of the Legislative Office building in at the Sherman building. So hope to see you there so we can continue talking about aerospace and economic development here in the state of Colorado.
Thank you, and we really hope that you'll come tomorrow for lunch. NASA, you know, is hoping to return to the moon by 2024, so that would just be a really fun thing for us to not only witness but show our children. And I'm hoping that people will be interested and want to go across the street tomorrow and join us all for lunch. The caucus always puts on a great lunch. If you can RSVP, that is appreciated but not required. So anyway, again, it's tomorrow. That's Wednesday from 12 to 1:30, and we hope to see you there.
Please RSVP and see you there. Thanks.
Representative Froelich.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is an honor to serve with you.
You as well, Representative.
Members, I have an exciting tribute that I would love your attention for, and I would also request that it be read at length. Which one is it? Sorry about that.
Members, we have a tribute.
The House of Representatives, convened in the 72nd General Assembly, hereby extends sincere commendations to Bobby Skaggs. Principal Bobby Skaggs has been named the 2019 High School Principal of the Year by the Colorado Association of School Executives. Ms. Skaggs' outstanding leadership, dedication, and advocacy on behalf of her students at Colorado's finest high school of choice, along with her contributions to her community, make her a role model for educators everywhere. She has worked tirelessly to personalize the school and education experience for each individual student. The members of the Colorado House of Representatives are proud to congratulate Principal Skaggs for earning this prestigious award and thank her for her outstanding work on behalf of the students of our state. On request of Representative Meg Froelich, given this 23rd day of April, 2019, State Capitol in Denver.
Representative Froelich.
Thank you very much. Members, please welcome Dr. Bobby Skaggs. She is Colorado Principal of the Year. She is the principal at Colorado's finest high school of choice in Englewood, Colorado. This is an alternative education campus where 95% of the students are at risk for dropping out. Colorado's finest has an outstanding performance rating. Please welcome Dr. Skaggs, and if you would stand, Dr. I guess you are, so thank you. She is joined by Englewood Superintendent Dr. Wendy Rubin, School Board President Tina Prang, and Dr. Skaggs' daughter Nicole Renaud, and who did our pledge for us. And Nicole is headed to the International DECA Marketing Competition in Orlando this weekend.
Congratulations, Dr. Skaggs, and thanks for joining us today. Representative Escar.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, where I get my counterpart here. Members, tomorrow is the day that we've all been waiting for, to wear jeans on the House floor. If you have not paid your $5, we still have these here ready to go. And tomorrow we'll take a moment and explain exactly why we are pushing so hard to raise some funds and to really talk about the importance of Denim Day and what it means for all of us.
I would just like to say I have a 20 in my box now, too.
I have a few 20s in my box.
So we
I'm just
may
saying.
be running neck and neck here, but I'm still thinking this side of the aisle is going to win.
I don't know, guys. Oh, thank you very much. Oh, that's a 10. See? 5 is the minimum, folks. 5's the minimum. Feel free. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative McLaughlin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Education Committee, we have another bill added on today, so take note. We are doing Senate Bill 171, Senate Bill 231, Senate Bill 190, Senate Bill 176, and Senate Bill 216. I think we should be done by 3 or 4 this morning, so we're good to go. Thank you.
And I have one announcement on the Education Committee. Shannon Bird will replace Bri Buenteo on Education for today only. Representative Beckman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's great when people come to visit us at the Capitol, and I'd like to introduce my shadows from the Leadership Program of the Rockies, Hillary Taylor and Jay Munt. Thank you for being here today. I hope they're going to watch us today, and I think it'll be a very interesting day for them to watch the Colorado legislature. So welcome.
Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Capitol Choir, come on down.
Don't you think people who have birthdays today should stand? Because it's hard sometimes to see them because they're little.
But you know.
We're not calling people little people.
Come on, people. Come on, people now. Let's sing happy birthday. Everybody get together.
Are we giving the birthday bird?
Bird, 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 bird. Okay.
Bird's the word.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Representative Byrd. Happy birthday to you. Thank you, Capitol Choir.
Representative Bachenfeld.
Thank you again, Madam Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you. I also have a shadow today from the leadership of the Rockies, Mr. James Engelbrecht from Watkins, Colorado. Back in the far corner. Welcome, James.
Thank you for joining us. It sounds like maybe a few more folks have friends from the leadership group of the Rockies. Representative Buck or Carver? How about both of you?
So I just have to also, I am just warm to have my shadow today. It's Lindsay Isabel, and she has her wonderful 2 kids in the corner, and so if you could make them feel welcome, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Representative Carver.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, if you would please welcome my shadow, Catherine Hendricks. Catherine, if you would stand. Thanks, Catherine, for joining us.
I want you all to know these are all fine-worthy, but I'm giving you all a pass. Representative Buck.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I know you have been so kind to not fine us this year, and we gratefully appreciate it. I have 2 wonderful friends of mine out of the Weld County area from Farmers Insurance, Cindy Sherman, former Windsor City Council, and Luke Schultz over there. So welcome also.
Representative Weissman.
Thank you, and good morning, Madam Speaker. Judiciary members, here's a heads up for today and also Thursday. Today we will follow the printed calendar as it has been distributed. Senate Bill 172 back for action only. House Bill 1324, then Senate Bills 165, 136, 30, and 36 for this Thursday. It's not printed yet. It'll be on tomorrow's calendar. For this Thursday, we have Senate Bills 191 and 241. Anything that we get that comes over to us today or tomorrow and that is assigned to Judiciary, I will try to calendar for Thursday as well. So as we are at the end of the session and moving quickly, be on the lookout for more. Thank you.
Representative Lontine.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's a pleasure to serve with you. Health and insurance members, just a heads up. Tomorrow we have added to the calendar Senate Bill 217 for action only. And it is not currently on the calendar. We will also be hearing those on the calendar: Senate Bill 61, Senate Bill 055 for action only again, House Bill 1320, and Senate Bill 219. Thank you.
Are there any other announcements or introductions? I'm just going to point out, members, that the Senate calendar is 17 pages and the House calendar is 7 pages. Just saying. I just wonder who's working harder. Okay, Assistant Majority Leader Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee will be meeting this afternoon at 1:30 p.m. with a slight change in order to accommodate getting certain bills over to the Finance Committee as soon as possible. So the current order we're looking at is Senate Bill 196, Senate Bill 146, Senate Bill 220, Senate Bill 221, Senate Bill 149. If anyone has particular time constraints today, please come talk to me. I think we might try to be flexible to accommodate some conflicts.
Are there any other announcements or introductions? Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. With permission of the Majority Leader, I will be absent starting at noon on Friday, April 26th.
Permission is granted. Assistant Majority Leader Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to proceed out of order for the consideration of resolutions.
Seeing no objection, we will proceed out of order for consideration of resolutions. Mr. Randall, Assistant Majority Leader Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to proceed out of order for the consideration of House Bill 1014.
Wait, House Joint Resolution?
House Joint Resolution 1014.
Seeing no objection, we will proceed out of order for consideration of House Joint Resolution 1014. Mr. Randall, please read the title of House Joint Resolution 1014. Members, this is a resolution and we stand during resolutions.
House Joint Resolution 1014 by Representatives Michelson, Janae, and McKean, also Senators Janal and Gardner, concerning the declaration of April 28, 2019 through May 5, 2019 as Holocaust Awareness Week.
Representative Michelson, Janae.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask that the resolution be read at length.
Do you want to move the resolution?
Yes, I move Resolution 19-1014 and ask that it be read at length.
Whereas prejudice, bigotry, bias, and racism have been the cause of conflict, war, and mass atrocities throughout human history. And whereas the Holocaust was the systematic, bureaucratic, state-sponsored persecution and murder of Jews by the Nazi regime and its collaborators, and whereas the Nazis who came to power in Germany in January 1933 asserted that Germans were racially superior and that Jews and others were inferior and an alien threat to the so-called German racial community, and whereas Hitler used anti-Semitism as a political weapon to gain popular support, blaming Jews for all of Germany's problems, including the country's defeat in World War I, the economic depression, and the Bolshevik threat of communism. It made little difference that Hitler's accusations were blatantly contradictory and his so-called facts were fabricated. And whereas between 1933 and 1945, Nazi Germany and its collaborators murdered 6 million Jews, 2 out of every 3 Jews who lived throughout Europe, 1.5 million of whom were children, as well as 5 million other civilians, including Sinti, Roma people, people with intellectual or developmental disabilities, gay men, Jehovah's Witnesses, Soviet prisoners of war, and political dissidents. And whereas we recall that in the aftermath of war, Israel, a thriving democracy and close ally and friend of the United States, became a refuge for many survivors who endured the ravages of the Holocaust. And whereas we gratefully acknowledge the more than 26,500 non-Jews who, at great risk to themselves, saved Jews during the Holocaust from extermination and have been designated righteous among the nations by Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Remembrance Center. And whereas today, as we mourn the loss of those who were killed and consider the terrible experiences of those who suffered and lived through the Holocaust, we note that anti-Semitic acts are not a thing of the past. According to the Anti-Defamation League in Colorado, the number of reported anti-Semitic incidents more than tripled between 2015 and 2017, when they rose from 18 to 57 incidents. And in 2018, there were 39 anti-Semitic incidents reported in Colorado, which is still more than twice the number of incidents in 2015. And whereas we must acknowledge that ethnic cleansing, genocide, terrorism, crimes against humanity, and wars on civilian populations are not relics of the past. And whereas, regretfully, the phrase never again has become yet again, as we see today and in the recent past so much brutality in places like Myanmar, Syria, Iraq, Nigeria, Bosnia, Cambodia, Rwanda, the Sudan, and the world's newest country, South Sudan. And whereas today, while we remember the Holocaust, we focus our attention on the passing of Holocaust survivors who provided firsthand accounts of the terrors they endured, leaving their children and grandchildren as the last generations to know the stories of the Holocaust directly from those who lived through it. And whereas, while we are fortunate that several organizations in Colorado are dedicated to retelling the stories of the Holocaust and other genocides, it is not enough. Far too many people, including most students, need more opportunities to learn about these atrocities. And whereas it is our responsibility to bear witness to the truth of the horrors of the Holocaust and its many lessons, now therefore be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 72nd General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the Senate concurring herein, that we, the members of the General Assembly, declare the week of April 28th, 2019 through May 5th, 2019 as Holocaust Awareness Week, and that we declare that the people of Colorado should use these days to teach and remember the great injustices of the past and to commit to preventing such atrocities in the future.
Representative Michelson-Jeannet.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So that this can get over to the Senate, I ask that we vote now and speak later.
The question before us is the passage of House Joint Resolution 1014. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. The motion passes. Representative McKean.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would ask that the morning's roll call be listed as co-sponsors.
Seeing no objection, the morning roll call will be added as co-sponsors. Representative Michelson-Jeannet.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members, for your attention this morning as we spend a few moments commemorating the Holocaust. And the Holocaust, or as I grew up knowing it called as the Shoah, was a time when my people in this lifetime were targeted and exterminated. My own family members, my ancestors. I come from Lodz, just north of Lodz in Poland is a little town called Kalisz, and my maiden name is Kalisz. And my family thrived there. Poland, also known to the Jewish people as Polin, here we rest, was a place where Jews were accepted. And for my people, it also became a place where we almost ceased to exist. Abraham Foxman, who was the longtime president of the Anti-Defamation League, was famous for saying, and I'm paraphrasing, so this is not his exact quote, that Auschwitz was not built with bricks, but with words. How do we start to, as human beings, get to a place where we can look at another and say, you don't deserve to live on this planet with me? It's not an easy thing. Much goes into it. And there are seeds that are sown when we choose words that dehumanize, when we stop looking at people as individuals, but as groups to fear, when we start placing blame on one another or to a specific group, we start to set the groundwork for this type of hatred and animosity. We as legislators use our words every single day to communicate what is truly important and valuable to us, to our communities, to our constituents that we represent. And I ask that we think very carefully about every word that we use, because in the heat of the moment, we may choose to use a word that we know is a zinger, that we know is going to activate another. We've all done it at one time or another, because we get caught up in the heat and in the passion. But that's where it begins. Last year, I talked about how we are called honorable during a different resolution. People look to us to lead the way. Whether we thought about that or not when we ran for office, we came in here with passions and ideas and ways to fix the community that we think is going to make Colorado the best state to live in for all of our citizens. But when we show up in the public and use words that we know are zingers, we are sowing the seeds for hatred and animosity that leads us down a path none of us wish to walk. So let us all in these last 2 weeks, in honor of those who have perished around the world because words made them inhuman, let's use our words very well.
Representative McKean.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Last year I told you a story of absolutely one of the most moving things that I've ever experienced in my life. Walking through Yad Vashem and coming across the very story of Osnat Fox's parents' and aunt's salvation through the hands of another during the Holocaust. Never been so moved in my life. The room that I came to before that room had these black boxes on the wall, and you would open the boxes and they were letters from German high command to their families. And so I stopped to read some of these letters. And what I come away with is that the words and the zingers and the things that we do and the things that we say are all kind of part and parcel to how we get through life, pushing and pulling a little bit and trying to just make our way. But the inhumanness that I read in those letters is actually anti-human. It's anti-us. You have to get to a point where you have internalized that kind of hatred and that kind of intolerance to such a degree that you're willing to do things you would never otherwise do. One of the letters was from Hermann Goering to his children. In the letter, he said, at first, the killing was hard. And then I decided I just had to keep doing it, and it would get easier. That gap, right? That gap from being a human being to being a monster is bridged somehow by probably this sort of mountain of intolerance, this mountain of hatred that you just fill it in with. It's an avalanche of the things that we would never allow in ourselves. You know, we have argued a lot this year about various ways of getting on about our business. Argued, maybe we've just debated, but feels like argument sometimes. You know, as many of you know, I have a deep history in Norway, and I get to talk to people there a lot. And we gave examples from the recent years of anti-Semitism in the United States. But I can tell you, for about the last 10 years in Norway, when I'm there, I can hear the anti-Semitism. I can hear what I call the old Europe, right? The old Europe of, this is my group, that's your group, and by God, you know, there's a division between these two things. And what I would tell you is that maybe it's a function of a world that's more connected, that by its very nature makes us encamp with the people that we can connect with easier now. And maybe it is a world in which we look for the reason why things aren't quite working out so well for us, and we look across the way and say, well, maybe it's their fault. Representative Michelson-Janae, I think you say it so well, that, you know, how do we keep from using the words that hurt, using the words that sort of ultimately prove our point, but eviscerate someone else? And I think that's one of those things. I invited Representative Byrd to Loveland last week, and we had a great town hall at which we honestly just showed people that we don't agree very much. But guess what? I genuinely respect her. We could talk to the citizens, the community members of my town, and show them that even though there are divides about what we think, we can do this with a civility that begins to paste over those gulfs, begins to fill those chasms, not with hatred, but with understanding and with respect and with a desire to understand the mind of someone else. I think that's where it starts. May you all be blessed with a trip to Yad Vashem someday. And may you all come out of that building just thinking, this can never happen again. Never.
Representative Singer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to our resolution sponsors for their time, their consideration. As many of you know, although I guess with term limits, now at least 30% of you don't know, that my experience, my family's experience with the Holocaust was a little different than some other people's experiences. So Representative Waller talked about his experience visiting Eastern Europe and Israel years ago. And he said, you know, I could never imagine, you know, being lined up, being told, men over here, women and children over here, what would I do in that situation? Where would I be? And I think about where we are today in our seat of power, and that's where I want to start my story. Because my grandfather on my mother's side, Edwin Peckler, was an American citizen, had come here. My great-grandparents had traveled here after pogroms in Eastern Europe and had been here about 30, 40 years before the Holocaust even began. And he enlisted in the military. He became a staff sergeant, never wanted to go beyond that. And I can only describe him as pretty much the physical opposite of me. He's a bit of a short Viking. He was about 5'4", really stocky, had been a track and field shot putter, and blonde hair and blue eyes. So, and he spoke really good German too. And he was the staff sergeant who was in charge of Nazi POWs. So when I go back to Representative Waller's empathy for what happened to my people, let's think about what happens when the shoe is on the other foot. My grandfather had every opportunity to exact his own revenge. Think about that for a second. The people responsible for the genocide of your people, their lives are now in your hands. What do you do? Well, this short, stocky Viking who spoke perfect German walked up to them and said, in his best German accent, "Ich bin ein Jude, I'm a Jew." And they all went, "Nein, nein, nein, can't be true, can't be true. How could this perfect image of an Aryan be Jewish?" And that was the beginning of the conversation he would have with them, not as a threat, but as a door to open the conversation to say, you know what? What Hitler was saying and who I am, are they the same? Some of these POWs were 17 and 18 years old. Maybe had never even met somebody who was Jewish before. On their birthdays, he would bake them cakes. He maybe didn't share all their cigarette rations with them, but that's another story for another day. But at the end of the day, those POWs had a new thought process, had a new mind for what they saw. Obviously, the shoe is on the other foot in our position as well. We are people in power here. So the question is, what do we do with our power? Do we use it to exact revenge? Do we use it to educate? Probably don't use it to steal cigarette rations, but I hear there's a bill coming that might deal with tobacco a little bit later on. What do we do with our power? And how do we educate people? How do we stand up and break the molds of prejudice? And I want to close with this. And this isn't my family, but a friend of mine, Michael Kimmelman, lost his grandmother just a week ago. His grandmother lived to over the age of 91 after surviving the Holocaust, going through that at the age of 15, losing much of her family. And she said something that sort of struck a chord with me. She would go to school groups and she said, "I didn't tell my story for 20 years because no one wanted to hear it. Now I tell it. And what I want to know is once I'm gone, who is going to tell it? You are my witnesses. Only those who hear it can tell it to their children." That's our responsibility. That's why this resolution is so important. It's not just about my experience, my family's experience, the Jewish community's experience, but it's the experience of all of those who have faced hatred and prejudice and intolerance, because that is what leads to genocide. And so thank you for listening. And I hope you have an opportunity to tell these stories to your children. Please vote yes for HJR 1014.
Representative Weissman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, I wanted to share a few things from around the Seder table this past weekend that I think are very relevant here. The first is the parable that's part of every Passover discussion about the 4 children. Now, this goes back to the Torah, but it's taken on a new gloss, I think, in the 20th century. The 4 children are the wise child, the rebellious child, the simple child, and the child who does not know how to ask. And you know, these are given many different interpretations, and like a lot of things in Judaism, you can talk about them for hours. But, you know, looking at the fact of the Holocaust and interpreting this parable now, you know, some people apply a midrash or a gloss, an interpretation, you know, that goes as follows. You know, the wise child, those are the people who had to live the experience of the Holocaust. And the rebellious are one generation removed, you know, the children of that generation. And then the simple are those one generation yet further removed. Simple, lacking context, need to be educated. And then the last child is the child who has come so far that he or she doesn't even know how to ask. So if you reckon the generations from the Holocaust, as some of my colleagues have pointed out, you know, some of us around today are at risk of being the simple generation. And then what comes after that is the generation who doesn't even know how to ask. And as some of my colleagues have already pointed out, we can't afford to let that happen, because the teachings of the Shoah are too profound for us to forget. And the other thing to share that I think is a little bit closer to home for us here as we come to the end of the session, where we have had and will continue to have some sharp debates, is the part of the Seder where you dab from your glass of wine onto the plate to mark the plagues that were visited upon those who oppressed the Israelites thousands of years ago. And the symbolism of that is you are giving up a little bit of something that is precious, you know, wine, to acknowledge, even to acknowledge and mark the suffering that was visited upon those who did great harm to you. That's related to the concept of Dainu that my colleague from Adams County spoke about, or translates to it would have been enough, or sufficiency. Many plagues were visited upon those who did harm to the Israelites thousands of years ago, but the teaching of Judaism is not to relish in those, not to take joy from them, certainly to appreciate one's own liberation and freedom, but to bear in mind, you know, what was suffered by those on the other side. So we get into some really sharp arguments down here, but I think in that symbolic act of commemoration for the difficulties experienced even by those on the other side, I think that that's worth us bearing in mind here as we come into our last 11 days. Thank you.
Representative Byrd. Minority Leader Neville.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you guys for this resolution. Going through Yad Vashem, the biggest thing that sticks in my mind is at the very end you go through and you actually go through this wonderful commemoration of the children that were lost. And that's what really stuck with me, was seeing the children's faces and then recollecting my own children. And I can't imagine being put in the position as a parent of having to give your child up and not know what's going to happen to them. And then you hear the stories of there were actually other Jewish people at the concentration and death camps that would actually convince the mothers to separate their children, because if they didn't, they would send them both off to death right away. I just can't imagine being put in that position. And then when you think about it, this happened relatively shortly in historical terms after the Armenian genocide, which was relatively forgotten. And so I think this resolution this week is important, but it should be an everyday remembrance as well, because it is that awareness. I think back at history, had the world been more aware of the atrocities of the Armenian genocide, could have we stopped the Holocaust? I don't know that answer, but I think it's important that we are aware so we prevent future things like this from happening. So thank you too for this resolution.
Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wanted to come up here and talk about another element that I hadn't heard being mentioned. A few years ago, in 2015, I had the opportunity to interview Norman Shetley, who passed away last year. He was a World War II soldier from my hometown of Delta, and he was part of the liberation of Dachau. And it was pretty amazing to interview someone who was one of the witnesses to one of these camps, one of these Holocaust concentration camps. And I'll never forget sitting there in his living room. The tape recorder was on, I was busy taking notes. And he started to describe what he saw. He was with the very first American soldiers that found Dachau in Upper Bavaria in southern Germany, and they didn't fully know what was going on. He said they arrived at the front gates and they saw what he described as the living dead. He said they were people that were skin and bones, literally. I mean, we've seen the photos. But I can't imagine being a soldier, not fully understanding that this isn't a prisoner of war camp. This is something else, and not understanding what it is, and trying to bring clarity to that, and not knowing what to do at that point in time. And he just described in great detail. I will spare you that. I'm sure you can think of what he said next. But it's just amazing what we can do and also what can happen without us knowing. I know we think of today and all the technology we have, and we think, oh, that could never happen today because we have the internet. We have cell phones. It's not like it was 75 years ago. But it could. And I just wanted to bring you Norman Shetley's story because it's one that we always need to think about, and the fact that this was a horrible mark on our past, and that it certainly, there were the primary victims, but there were also secondary victims who bore witness to this. So thank you very much for this resolution.
Representative Singh.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I so appreciate the sponsors bringing this resolution this year, and I believe it was last year as well. When we're talking about words that matter, there was something said at this well in haste, and I'm not 100% sure it wasn't meant the way it came out, but I think it's important to say this. You are more important than this institution. The people outside this building are more important than the institution. Someday, this building, the paint will peel and the bricks will crumble into dust. But you will still be here because you are eternal. It's important to say that because when we place more importance on an institution, be that religious or government, we risk repeating some of the atrocities we saw happen in the Holocaust. The people are always the most important thing. And again, it just bears saying, because I think, again, it was said in haste. It wasn't meant the way it came out. And I think we need to pay attention to that as well. So thank you so much for bringing this. I really appreciate it.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Michelson-Janae.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members, for your comments, and especially Representative Soper. My grandfather was in the liberating group of Dachau, U.S. Army medic, and my husband's grandfather, my husband is not Jewish, my husband's grandfather was a political prisoner who was murdered 3 days before liberation at Dachau. So I just want to thank you for talking about our U.S. Army vets and for giving an opportunity, as the minority leader mentioned, to say, you know, so many others were caught up in this horrible mark on our history. And we would like to welcome some guests that are here. I'm going to ask them to stand. They're all over here, and we'll start with Representative McKean, Madam Speaker.
Thank you for being here so much. We have Rabbi Jay Streer. We have Phyllis Adler, Michelle Weingarten.
We have Jeremy Shaver, and we have Matt Most. If we could give them a round of applause for being leaders of the Jewish community.
Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, members. We have already passed the resolution, so then Assistant Majority Leader Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to proceed out of order for consideration of third reading of bills, final passage.
Seeing no objection, the House will proceed out of order for third reading of bills, final passage. Mr. Randall, please read the title of House Bill 1176.
House Bill 1176 by Representative Sirota and Huckes Lewis, also Senator Foote, concerning the enactment of the Healthcare Cost Savings Act of 2019 that creates a task force to analyze healthcare financing systems in order to give the General Assembly findings regarding systems for costs providing adequate healthcare to residents of the state and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Assistant Majority Leader Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1176 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the passage of House Bill 1176 on third reading and final passage. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Randall, please open the machine and members please vote. I'm seeing lots of hands up.
Mercy! Mercy!
You know, usually it's only $5 if it's more than one vote. So Majority Leader Garnett, it's a $3 fine. Mr. Randall, please close the machine. With 40 aye votes, 24 no votes, and 1 excused, House Bill 1176 is passed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 54.
Senate Bill 54 by Senator Crowder, also Representatives Valdez D. and Humphrey, concerning the regulation of surplus military vehicles for the purpose of the operation on the highway and in connection with making an appropriation.
Assistant Majority Leader Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of Senate Bill 54 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 54 on third reading and final passage. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Randall, please open the machine and members, please vote. Please close the machine. With 63 aye votes, 1 no vote, and 1 excuse, Senate Bill 54 is passed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 137.
Senate Bill 137 by Senators Todd and Crowder, also Representatives Hansen and Wilson, concerning the extension of the Colorado Student Leaders Institute and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Assistant Majority Leader Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of Senate Bill 137 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 137 on third reading and final passage. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Randall, please open the machine and members, please vote. Please close the machine. With 52 aye votes, 12 no votes, and 1 excuse, Senate Bill 137 is passed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 154.
Senate Bill 154 by Senator Crowder, also Representative Sirota, concerning the continuation of the regulation of psychiatric technicians by the State Board of Nursing in connection with the implementing the recommendations contained in the 2018 Sun's Report by the Department of Regulatory Agencies.
Assistant Majority Leader Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of Senate Bill 154 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 154 on third reading and final passage. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Randall, please open the machine and members, please vote. Please close the machine. With 41 aye votes, 23 no votes, and 1 excuse, Senate Bill 154 is passed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 164.
Senate Bill 164 by Senators Todd and Crowder, also Representative Mullica, concerning the continuation of in-home support services within the Colorado Medical Assistance Act and in connection therewith implementing the recommendations contained in the 2018 Sun's Report by the Department of Regulatory Agencies.
Assistant Majority Leader Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of Senate Bill 164 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 164 on third reading and final passage. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Randall, please open the machine and members, please vote. Baisley, please close the machine. With 56 aye votes, 8 no votes, and 1 excuse, Senate Bill 164 is passed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 166.
Senate Bill 166 by Senators Fields and Gardner, also Representative Roberts, concerning the Post Board revoking the certification of a peace officer who was found to have made an untruthful statement in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Assistant Majority Leader Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of Senate Bill 166 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 166 on third reading and final passage. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Randall, please open the machine and members, please vote. Please close the machine. With 48 aye votes, 16 no votes, and 1 excuse, Senate Bill 166 is passed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 167.
Senate Bill 167 by Senator Danielson, also Representatives Exum and Duran, concerning the creation of a Colorado Professional Firefighter's License Plate and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Assistant Majority Leader Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of Senate Bill 167 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 167 on third reading and final passage. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Randall, please open the machine and members please vote. Please close the machine. With 54 aye votes, 10 no votes, and 1 excused, Senate Bill 167 is passed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Randall, please read the title of House Bill 1314.
House Bill 1314 by Representatives Becker and Galindo, also Senators Winter and Donovan, concerning a just transition from a coal-based electrical energy economy and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Assistant Majority Leader Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1314 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the passage of House Bill 1314 on third reading and final passage. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Randall, please open the machine and members please vote. Please close the machine. With 40 aye votes, 24 no votes, and 1 excused, House Bill 1314 is passed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 229.
Senate Bill 229 by Senators Winter and Foote, also Representatives Gonzalez Gutierrez and Mollica, concerning the use of campaign contributions to reimburse candidate for dependent care expenses incurred by the candidate in undertaking campaign activities.
Assistant Majority Leader Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of Senate Bill 229 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 229 on third reading and final passage. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Randall, please open the machine and members please vote. Please close the machine. With 43 aye votes, 21 no votes, and 1 excused, Senate Bill 229 is passed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Randall, please read the title of House Bill 1278.
House Bill 1278 by Representative Lantino, Senator Fenberg, concerning modifications to miscellaneous provisions of the Uniform Election Code of 1992 and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Assistant Majority Leader Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1278 on third reading and final passage.
Representative Lantine.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Guess what, members? I have a technical third reading amendment, and I asked for permission to run it.
do you want to explain the amendment?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So we changed the hours of voting. We're having a later start date from, we had in the bill originally 6 a.m. and we're moving it to 7 a.m. I did part of that yesterday in an amendment, and this amendment is just conforming it to the engrossed bill. I knew I had to do this yesterday when I ran that amendment. That was the way the drafter explained we had to do it. So I asked for permission. Pretty please.
The question before the House is Representative Lontine's request for permission to offer a third reading amendment to House Bill 1278. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Randall, please open the machine. And members, please vote.
I'm going to do it. I'll move it for you.
Kennedy and Ransom. Please close the machine. With 58 aye votes, 6 no votes, and 1 excused, permission to give Representative Lontine permission. The motion to give Representative Lontine permission to pass the third reading amendment is passed. Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll move the amendment, and I'm excited to move L101. Shows how much work was done on House Bill 1278.
Wow. The question before the House is the passage of Representative Lontine's amendment to House Bill 1278 on third reading. Representative Humphrey.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And this is a slightly substantive conforming amendment, and I'll be a yes vote.
Mr. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please vote. Buck and Ransom and Lewis. Lewis, please close the machine. With 61 aye votes, 3 no votes, and 1 excused, the amendment to House Bill 1278 is passed. Assistant Majority Leader Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the repassage of, I'm sorry, not the repassage, the passage of House Bill 1278 as amended.
The question before the House is the passage of House Bill 1278 as amended on third reading and final passage. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please vote. With 37 aye votes, 27, please close the machine. With 37 aye votes, 27 no votes, and 1 excused, House Bill 1278 is passed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Assistant Majority Leader Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to lay over House Bill 1124 until later today.
Seeing no objection, House Bill 1124 will be laid over till later today. Okay. Mr. Randall, please read the reports of committees of reference.
Committee on Appropriations, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following bills be referred to the Committee of the Whole unamended with favorable recommendation. House Bill 1212, Senate Bill 59, Senate Bill 85, Senate Bill 94, Senate Bill 99, Senate Bill 145, Senate Bill 155, Senate Bill 159, Senate Bill 160, Senate Bill 161, Senate Bill 163, Senate Bill 192, Senate Bill 197, Senate Bill 202. The committee also recommends the following bills be amended as follows, and as amended be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. House Bill 1159, House Bill 1264, House Bill 1282, House Bill 1313, House Bill 1327, Senate Bill 2, Senate Bill 135.
Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, we're going to build on the special orders calendar that is currently in your calendar. I'm going to reorder it a little bit. So listen, and then there will be printouts up here. And if you have any questions, feel free to talk to Assistant Majority Leader Kennedy or myself. So I move the following bills be calendared on the special orders calendar in the following order. House Bill 1282, House Bill 1264, House Bill 1159, House Bill 1325, Senate Bill 133, Senate Bill 230, Senate Bill 2, Senate Bill 59, Senate Bill 85, Senate Bill 94, Senate Bill 99, Senate Bill 135, Senate Bill 155, Senate Bill 159, House Bill 1327, Senate Bill 160, Senate Bill 161, Senate Bill 163, Senate Bill 192, Senate Bill 197, Senate Bill 202, House Bill 1312, Senate Bill 104, and Senate Bill 187. So I move that those bills be added and calendared to the special orders calendar on Tuesday, April 23rd at 10:15 a.m.
Seeing no objection, those bills as listed by the Majority Leader will be made special orders at 10:15 a.m. Chris, who's in the chair?
That's a good question.
Galindo. Representative Galindo. You have heard the motion. Seeing no objection, Representative Galindo will take the chair.
The committee will come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there's a request for reading the bill at length. Committee amendments are printed and in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen and on your iPads. Bills will be laid over upon motion of the majority leader, and the coat rule is relaxed. Mr. Randall, will you please read the title of House Bill 1282?
House Bill 1282 by Representative Singer and Michelson-Jeannet concerning administration of the court-appointed Special Advocate Program.
Representative Singer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1282 and the Judiciary and Appropriations Committee's reports.
To the Appropriations Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Appropriations Committee simply ensured that this bill is able to fund this program within the Office of Child's Representative, within their existing resources, to make sure that we're fiscally responsible but also compliant with the Office of the State Auditor, and we ask for your aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the Appropriations Report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The report is passed. To the Judiciary Report. Representative Singer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the Judiciary Committee, we had one small change to make sure that our entities are operating in consultation with local CASA programs, and we ask for your aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the Judiciary Report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The report is passed. To the bill, Representative Michelson-Jeannet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. CASA, if you're not familiar with it, is the court-appointed Special Advocate Program, and they had an audit that said that oversight wasn't happening, and it was requested after months of conversation that we move to the State Court Administrator's Office. So we were working along that path, and the State Court Administrator's Office decided they did not want to do this, and so we worked with the Office of the Child Representative, where it currently was, and the auditors to make sure that we set this bill up absolutely right so that CASA, which is an important program to represent our youth and protect our youth, is operating smoothly and with appropriate oversight. We ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1282. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The bill is passed. Mr. Randall, please read the title of House Bill 1264.
House Bill 1260.
Oh, wait, System Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to lay over House Bill 1264, two bills.
Seeing no objection, House Bill 1264 will be laid over two bills.
I just called it.
Mr. Randall, please read the title of House Bill 1159.
House Bill 1159 by Representatives Hawkes, Lewis, and Gray, also Senator Danielson, concerning modifications to the income tax credits for innovative motor vehicles.
Representative Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1159, the Finance Committee report, and the Appropriations Committee report.
To the Appropriations Report.
In the Appropriations Committee, we actually pared down the size of the program by a little bit, looking at the fiscal concerns for the out year of this tax credit. So we actually shrunk the size of the program in consultation with the Appropriations Committee. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the Appropriations Report. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The report is passed. To the Finance Report. Representative Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the Finance Committee, we made some technical cleanups to the bill. We made sure that hydrogen fuel cell vehicles would be included, as well as electric vehicles, to make sure that all zero emissions and clean vehicles would be included in this bill. I'd ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the Finance Report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The report is passed. To the bill, Representative Hawkes Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This program has been in place for several years, and we need to update it. Without this support for these new electric vehicles, we won't be able to attain our sustainability goals. So we ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1159. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The bill is passed. Mr. Randall, please read the title of House Bill 1325.
House Bill 1325 by Representatives Hansen and McKean, also Senators Priola and Bridges, concerning increasing consumer access to electric motor vehicles by allowing electric motor vehicle manufacturers to sell their own electric motor vehicles directly to consumers.
Morning to you.
Representative Hansen.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1325 in the State Affairs Committee report.
To the bill. To the State Veterans Committee report.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Members, we made one simple amendment in State Affairs, was to clearly define manufacturers, and I ask for your acceptance of the State Affairs Committee report.
Is there any further discussion? Representative McKean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the actual amendment was to make sure that that we do include electrical vehicle manufacturers under that, so that any buyback, any lemon law, anything else applies to them as well as any other manufacturer. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Williams.
It's okay, you could use them.
Oh, I'll put them on. Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, are we on the report?
Yes.
I'll wait for till we get to the bill. I apologize.
All right. Any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the State Veterans Military Affairs report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The report is passed. To the bill. Representative McKean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill, well, I guess a little background. So years and years ago, there was a business-to-business seller of buses out of Lamar. Turns out they were allowed to direct sell. And it turns out that a company, many of you who would know their name, also found that that was a way to direct sell. This evens the playing field. It says that if you want to compete in that market, you can direct sell just like another electric vehicle manufacturer. I would ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion? Representative Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, yeah, we heard this in committee, and I appreciate the discussion here, and I'm certainly, and I indicated this in the committee hearing, that I'm very sympathetic to this notion of removing barriers, opening up markets, and allowing more product, services, competition into our free market. So that's a good thing that I like about what we're trying to do here. However, right now we have a system, a model in place that dealerships have been running their businesses for many years, many years, and I would say generations. And that's something that we should be cognizant of as we debate this policy and move forward on. With this, we are potentially upending that dealership model. We are potentially upending the service that comes with that model, the accountability that comes with that business model. And that's one of the biggest concerns that I have with this bill, because it translates into potentially a harm in consumer protection. And that's one of the things that does need to be highlighted. And my hope is that there's a way to sort of thread the needle here by removing barriers, but also respecting the industry that is in place right now and the model that they have right now. And unfortunately, I think this bill does jeopardize, in part, what the dealers are having to do right now. And we certainly saw that in testimony. We had dealership representatives and business owners that came and said this bill would harm their industry. It could potentially harm consumers and the services that they receive after they've purchased a car. And this is certainly something that I think we should all be concerned about as we move forward on this debate. I think it's always good when we open up markets, but when we do so, we have to respect the current industries that are in place, and we shouldn't be so rapid, we shouldn't be so quick to do these kind of changes. And so, members, for now, I'm going to urge a no vote. And that's mainly because I don't believe we have the support of the dealers. We certainly don't have the support of a number of those individuals that came and testified. We also don't have the support of the motor carriers. And those are stakeholders and groups that I think should be brought in. And as soon as they can support something like this, then that would certainly make me feel more comfortable, because the last thing I want to do is jeopardize jobs or jeopardize or harm any businesses that are currently in place and have to deal with an existing legal framework that they've had to deal with for generations. And that's important, I think, to point out as we discuss this further. So I'll go ahead and yield my time here, but thank you, members, and I would urge a no vote for the time being.
Representative Humphrey.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I won't repeat all that my colleague, Representative Williams, just said. I agree with him wholeheartedly. And again, for generations, we've had this automobile dealership franchise model. And in the long run, the concern is that what this bill would do is not create an even playing field, but would really upend the apple cart. And that's what we don't want to see, because we have a system that works well for communities and for consumer protection. And certainly this bill in its introduced form, I'm not able to support. And I think at the very least it needs to get a number of amendments on it in order to help protect our dealerships and our car owners and consumers. Thank you.
Representative Liston.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Members, right now I rise in opposition to House Bill 1325 as it's been discussed. You know, the various good auto dealers around the state, they have invested millions of dollars in their businesses, because these are business owners. For instance, when a manufacturer, whether it's Ford or Chrysler or GM or a foreign manufacturer, a lot of times they'll come in and they'll say to the owner operator, say, look, you know, we want you to do this upgrade, this physical upgrade to your building, and you know, to stay competitive. And all of a sudden, the auto dealer, who has already invested millions of dollars in plant and equipment, has got to make a further upgrade. So when this bill comes along, allowing a franchisor to come in and offer their product for sale.
Could we please lower the noise? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So when another franchise comes in who doesn't have this infrastructure, doesn't have the people and the technical ability, and they're selling their electric vehicles or whatever, who's going to take care of the customer? So with our existing franchise dealers, they've done an excellent job for decades, not just over the last 10 or 20 years, but over the last 50 and 60 and 80 years. They're integral parts of our communities. We all know our good auto dealers. They're not only business people, but they're good citizens in all of our communities. They're out there sponsoring our Little League teams and our Girl Scouts and all of the other civic organizations. Another problem that I have with this on the with the electric vehicles, you know, we're really kind of tipping the scales, putting our thumb on the scales, and particularly I'm concerned about the trucks or the commercial vehicles that they're going to come in, and there again, the infrastructure is not in place. They don't have the service agreements. Even Tesla, which is probably the best known electric vehicle, you know, they have a very, very limited dealerships. In fact, they're cutting back on their dealerships. But when it comes to the commercial vehicles, when I say commercial vehicles, I'm talking about big trucks and so forth. So, you know, is the infrastructure going to be there to take care of that? So with that in mind, I move Amendment L004 and ask that it be displayed.
The amendment is properly displayed.
Very
To
good.
the
Thank you,
amendment,
Madam Chair.
Representative Liston.
So what this amendment does is that it excludes trucks over 10,000 pounds, which I don't know exactly how big that is, but I know that the commercial trucking industry is concerned, especially about, like I say, if there's electric commercial trucks, you know, who is going to take care if there's a breakdown with these trucks and so forth. You know, they could be in the middle of nowhere, and what's going to happen to these fleets of trucks out there? Because we do see them every now and then. You know, they have to be taken care of, the safety requirements and so forth. So this amendment basically excludes trucks over 10,000 pounds. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Representative McKean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a couple of questions, because actually I don't mind this amendment so much, because it seems to me that it sort of bifurcates that commercial light car, light truck world and the semis and the trucks that are hauling freight. I guess my question is, because right now in that world, we virtually have direct sales anyway. Freightliner, Kenworth, they're doing business-to-business direct sales most of the time these days anyway. Is that correct?
Representative Liston.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, Representative McKean, on for your big rigs like that, Kenworth and whatnot, there's a company called PACCAR, I'm familiar with it, that manufactures Peterbilt, Kenworth, et cetera. You know, they have the infrastructure, but on the electric vehicle side, for the commercial vehicles, I don't believe that's the case, and that's what they're concerned about. So the Kenworths of the world, they may have the ability to take care of regular internal combustion like they have, but currently, right now, there is no infrastructure to take care of these electric vehicles. So I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Hansen.
Yeah, thank you so much, Madam Chair. And members, I would ask for a no vote on this amendment. I think what we're trying to do here is bifurcate the market. We're trying to separate what's happening with the passenger vehicles, light-duty vehicles. There are many incredible options coming to market on the commercial side for delivery trucks, et cetera, that I don't see any reason why we'd want to limit that in this bill. And so I'd ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Representative Liston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, members, I'd ask for an aye vote, because, you know, it's one thing to have a small delivery truck. This bill, this amendment does not address the smaller commercial vehicles. This only addresses the large commercial vehicles. So we're not trying to necessarily bifurcate, but who is going to take care of these commercial vehicles? Right now, there is no infrastructure in place in Colorado to take care of these large commercial vehicles. That's all we're trying to do, is let's not get inadvertently a EV manufacturer out there and there's no parts and whatnot to take care of them. Let's not put the cart before the horse. I urge an aye vote. This is a good amendment.
Representative Williams.
No, you go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, this amendment was brought in part at the request of the motor carriers, and I won't rehash everything that Representative Liston has already said, but I'll say this, ditto to what he's saying. I think when we're trying to pass these kind of policies, we need to be very careful, deliberate, and I would even say slow acting. When we do these things, we want to make sure that we're not upending, what industries and businesses are used to, and this is one way that we can sort of soften the blow, so to speak, for people that are used to conducting business in the way that they're used to conducting business, especially for these commercial transactions. So I would just simply say, please vote yes on this. This is a good amendment that will help sort of ease us into this new world that we're finding ourselves in. So please vote yes.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L004. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. The amendment fails. To the bill, Representative Sane.
Thank you, members. And this bill bothers me for a couple different reasons. And I hate using phrases like the camel's nose into the tent, but the franchise system exists for a reason. And if we've carved out for one particular vehicle, I don't think that's going to be really helpful down the line. And I understand electric vehicles probably don't require as much maintenance or service as a regular gasoline-powered vehicle. But that being said, upending the franchise system in Colorado it's not something I'm willing to do, so I'm going to ask for no vote.
Representative McKean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, thank you, Representative Sane. I actually agree with you. And I agree with you because I think it is a system that not only has hundreds of businesses in this state that have been established on that basis. I think it does a good job of servicing the vehicles. I would also say that since we're talking about cars, we're already miles down that road, and this is my concern, is that we now have a direct sales model that we allow Tesla to sell under, but we actually limit other people out of the market. So my concern is, I think you make a great point that this is a value to the consumer. It's actually a franchise system that is part of what keeps our businesses serving all of the corners of this state. But we already have one manufacturer of a very specific vehicle type that is not required to have that, and I believe truly this does level the playing field, certainly on the basis of the light passenger, light truck market.
Representative Singh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For a second, I thought you were going to say I'm going to vote no on my own bill, Representative McKean. The fact that we've got one manufacturer, if we put this bill into place, we might as well guarantee we're going to have one manufacturer. That's against the competition model. That is what franchises actually help with, is the competition factor in the market. If one dealership treats their customers badly, they might consider switching brands, even if the brand may have some things that they like better for their family and their family vehicle. This is a really important conversation to have. I appreciate the conversation, but I'm going to continue to be a no on the bill because I don't think this is fair. I don't think this bill creates a fairness model, and I don't think it helps the competition in the marketplace.
Representative Sandridge.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. If you look at free markets, it seems like this is maybe picking winners and losers, maybe offering special rules, special leniency to certain group. I'm more of a let the free market decide if all the major auto industry dealers or manufacturers actually get together and say, hey, let's going to cut out the dealers. That's on them. I don't see it happening. But just because you offer a certain type of product, you shouldn't have a unique set of rules just for you that kind of leans more favorable to you. I say let these manufacturers follow the same rules that everybody else has to follow. If they have a great product, they will survive. If they don't have a great product, don't let them survive. Then they won't survive. But I think our dealers have worked hard, followed by the rules. They've taken substantial risk. I know owning a dealership can be a difficult job, and we don't need to pick a certain group and say that they don't really have to play by the rules. So with that said, I ask for a no vote on this bill. Thank you.
Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to share, I heard this bill in committee, and I heard the testimony given. What I heard is that this bill will level the playing field for solely electric vehicle manufacturers. I didn't hear a strong argument for how this will actually disrupt the dealership model. We're talking about a very small segment of the marketplace, and what I believe is important is that we move toward electrifying the vehicles in Colorado and in this country. And this helps us take that important step. And if we need to revisit franchise laws down the road, if we need to revisit this legislation down the road, that is perfectly within our purview, and we can do that. But this is a small step that we can take to help expand the electric vehicle market for consumers here in Colorado, and I urge a yes vote.
Representative Melton. Representative Melton.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members, for this debate. I heard this bill in committee, and I'm really honestly a little torn on this because I do want to see the expansion of electric vehicles. I ran an electric vehicle bill this year. I think this is great, and I think that we should be promoting these. And so I was a yes on the bill in committee, but I was also a yes on one of the amendments because we are somewhat doing a disservice to a lot of small business owners, a lot of small businesses that have been playing by the rules for the last 80 plus years. You know, we had a system put in the statute that said that manufacturers can't sell directly to consumers and that we were going to set up this entire dealer model. And we've had a lot of good players, a lot of good actors, a lot of good players in my district that are also very good employers. And so, you know, I do want to help, you know, with the expansion of these EVs, but at the same time, I think that there does need to be a balance with our dealers. And so, with that, members, I am going to move L007 and ask that it be displayed.
The amendment is before us. To the amendment, Representative Melton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So one of the arguments that we heard in committee is that it's difficult for a lot of these smaller EV new startup companies to get into the market because they're playing against some really big players like GM, like Ford, like Chrysler, and those companies are selling numerous amounts of vehicles compared to the small amounts that these EV companies are selling. So what Amendment L007 says is you can sell up to 500 at your own location, but if you reach 500 and start selling more than 500, you need to go through a dealer. And that way we can make sure that, you know, these are really helping these small startup companies get a foothold, kind of create some market share. And then once they've created that market share and are a big player, a big time player, then they go to the dealer model with the other big time players. I think that that's a fair approach to this, to again, generate that demand, generate that market share, and get these vehicles out on the road. So with that, members, I would ask for an aye vote on L007.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I do appreciate the amendment that was offered by Representative Melton here. I'm in full support of it. Members, when we talk about changing our laws, changing the legal framework by which businesses have operated for 80 years, generations, family to family, in our communities, this makes sense. This allows for both sides to kind of have their way. You can have these direct sales, but once you hit a certain threshold, then you got to go through a dealership, and I think that's appropriate. And one of the reasons this is necessary, and this was brought up in testimony, is on the service side of things. When your car is having trouble, or you need it fixed or tuned up or what have you, the best place you can go is, either, of course, your local mechanic if you're comfortable with them, but oftentimes many individuals go to their dealerships to get the service they need on these vehicles. And that's really important to recognize and consider, because that's where most of these issues are going to be fixed, and that's why it's a consumer protection issue as well. Once you start engaging in these direct sales, you're going to quickly find out that the service side of things is not so robust. It's not as well played out through these direct sales. It's oftentimes you're having to go to a dealership to figure this out, or going to a separate mechanic to figure it out. And that's a part of the problem overall with it, which is what I think this amendment would help resolve. You can still have your sales up to 500, and then you got to go to a dealership model, and there's really no terrible reason why not to do that. We had during testimony, we had John Medved come in and testify that he sold on average, I believe, 700 Fords a year. And now Ford's a pretty popular brand. I have to imagine that 500 is probably a fair number for these electric vehicles, and that that we're probably not going to see that happen annually. So this really does, I think, kind of help. So I would ask for a yes vote on this amendment and help us to kind of, like I said, for ease everyone into this, help soften the blow, especially for our dealerships and the customers that rely on them for the good service they receive.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Hansen.
Thanks so much, Madam Chair. And members, this is a wonderful debate this morning. This is a topic that deserves our attention. And I think there's a little bit of a misconception about this bill. This bill doesn't take anything away from the current dealer-manufacturer model. But what we are trying to do is create more access for Colorado customers. And so I need to urge a no vote on L7 because this actually takes us backwards. Keep in mind that Tesla sold 6,000 vehicles in Colorado last year and is on a trajectory in 2019 to sell more than that. So if we suddenly put this cap in, we will basically be destroying their business model in the state. I don't think anyone wants to do that. So that would be a step backwards, and we would be limiting consumer choice if we did that. I also want to address the argument that somehow this bill is going to be highly disruptive. We've heard the phrase, we need to soften the blow. Folks, there is no blow here. The only thing we're trying to do is allow more access for Colorado customers for innovative products. Other states, in fact, more than 20, have this in place right now, and guess what? Every single one of those 20 states that have direct sales available still have very robust dealership networks. Utah and Arizona recently adopted a very similar provision, still have very vibrant, robust dealership model. So please keep in mind that this is not a massive change. This is simply trying to allow what Tesla is already doing for other manufacturers of electric vehicles. And other states have already shown that the sky is not falling. Michigan has adopted this same approach and still has a robust dealership model in the state of Michigan. I urge a no vote on this amendment.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I definitely understand and agree that, other states are doing this. But one of the things that still allows for those dealers to continue to operate in those states is that internal combustion engines are still the dominant factor in the market. But what happens when those companies decide to switch over to all EV? We've already heard Jaguar talking about that. We've seen Ford reduce their inventory and cut out sedans to start exploring going to an all-EV fleet. So what happens when that happens and these large manufacturers can then sell directly to consumers? So we're not just talking about the little guys then if we're talking about selling directly to consumers. I think that this amendment does lead us to, again, what this bill is supposed to do, which is help these smaller companies start building a market share. But I definitely can understand that there could be some concerns about 500 total vehicles being sold. So with that, members, I move a substitute amendment, L010, and ask that it be displayed.
The amendment is before us to L010, Representative Melton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so L010 says that it's 500 per calendar year. So again, this doesn't completely cut off. It says that the smaller guys can still play in the market and can continue to grow if it takes a few years for them to grow that market share. But again, if we're really doing this to help encourage EV sales here in the state and help these smaller startups get a foothold, then let's do that. But let's again protect the dealers who are selling from the largest manufacturers in the world and make sure that if those larger manufacturers go all EV, that they can still sell them without having to compete directly with the manufacturer. With that, members, I would ask for an aye vote.
Representative Humphrey.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I rise in support of the amendment. I think that, we're talking about 500, and this is per calendar year, which, this bill was presented as the Rivian bill in committee, which, by all accounts, is a pretty slick pickup truck, and that's great, but, they're not going to sell anything near 100. If they did that well in their, the first few years here, they'd be real happy, I think. So a 500 cap is useful because the sponsors talk about, 2019 numbers and that there is no threat to the dealership model at this point. But we're looking to the future if we enact this legislation. And what's going to happen as those sales increase, as they will, we're going to be subverting an arrangement that we've had with the auto dealers in this country for generations. And it's important to preserve that model. I think it works well for consumers. And so this amendment, I think, is very reasonable, and I urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Representative Liston.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Members, I rise in support of this amendment. Once again, what the dealers have made considerable, not considerable, huge investments for their dealerships to the tunes of millions of dollars. They're good citizens. Colorado, through the legislative process, we have always supported the franchise system. It has served all consumers throughout the state and really the nation very, very well. And what concerns me about this bill, and I know that the sponsor is all gung-ho for electric vehicles. We don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with electric vehicles. But to come in and suddenly this company Rivian that has no dealerships, no infrastructure, no relationships, all of a sudden we're giving them the golden path here into Colorado. They have not proven themselves at all. And where the dealerships here in Colorado have proven themselves year after year, decade after decade, and we're putting the thumb on the scale for one company in contravention to everybody else who has played by the rules year after year after year. And now then this one company has come in and said, give us a special deal. We all remember a number of years ago when Saturn, which was a division, I believe, of General Motors, came in and started selling their automobiles. And quite frankly, after a few years, I don't think it was more than 6 or 8 years, Saturn went kaput. And so who stepped forward to take care of the Saturn customers? It was the GM dealers. And Saturn is no more. And we've seen other examples of dealers coming in, foreign dealers, like Peugeot and other small dealerships, and sometimes they make it and sometimes they don't. So this one company, Rivian, who has sold no cars in Colorado, who's going to take care of their customers when Rivian does not have the infrastructure and the ability to take care of their customers? So I think Representative Melton's amendment is fair, it's equitable, so I urge an aye vote on Amendment 10. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Representative Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I certainly I rose in support for the underlying amendment. I certainly rise in support of this amendment. I think it even, gives the EVs even more flexibility. Now it's 500 per calendar year. That is a great sort of compromise. I want to thank Representative Melton for offering it because I think it does help everyone. During testimony, we had dealers come in. John Medved was one of them. There were other representatives from dealerships that came in and testified to the committee that this would be disruptive, that it would affect their businesses. And I think that's incredibly unfair for these companies and these businesses that are locally owned, a lot of times family owned, who have been playing by the rules for 80 plus years, who have passed their business on from one generation to the next. And what the bill does, absent this amendment, is it does upend it. And what this does, this amendment, it does soften the blow. And I think we need to take that seriously. I think there are a good chunk of us in this room that have dealerships that sell new vehicles in our districts. And I certainly don't want to be someone who has to go to my local dealership and explain to them why, this bill passed without reasonable guardrails in place that allows for new industry to come in, but has reasonable guardrails in place to allow for the franchise model for our dealerships to be able to continue on in a meaningful, profitable way. Again, if we're heading in a new direction here, that's all well and good, but we shouldn't do it at the expense of our dealerships who have been in our communities, who have certainly provided a wonderful service to our constituents, and who've contributed in so many other ways through charity or through jobs. These are important things that I don't think we should just cast aside willy-nilly or quickly. If we're going to do this, let's be slow, let's be deliberative, let's make sure that we're easing everyone into this, because it is a disruption. That's what the testimony showed during debate in the committee, and with this amendment, it does help. And I would urge a yes vote on this, because I think you're going to find that most EV companies are not going to even meet that threshold of 500, at least not to start out with. So it's a good compromise. And I will point out that also during testimony, dealerships said they would love to be the ones who are selling these electric vehicles. And so it's not as if that they don't want to sell these vehicles, or they don't want them sold, rather. They just want to be involved in the process, because for 80 plus years, that's the framework that they've been under, and we should respect that and not change it so quickly. So please vote yes on this amendment.
And Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And folks, members, L10 is basically the same as L7, so I'll just make the same statement. This would essentially make this bill pointless, because we'd be restricting it in a way that would move us backwards. Tesla, as I mentioned, already is at the 6,000 unit sales level in 2018. They're expected to exceed that in 2019. So moving forward with this amendment would take the state of Colorado backwards, and I believe is the wrong decision. So I urge a no vote on these amendments.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L010. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The amendment fails. To Amendment L007. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L007. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The amendment fails. To the bill. Representative Rich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was also in the committee hearing concerning this bill, and we listened to a lot of people, the majority of which were in opposition. One of the things, is when we're talking about competition, we're basically talking about supporting an out-of-state company. And I think it was Mr. Medved that talked about this happening time and time again, and sometimes these startup companies are undercapitalized, and a lot of carnage gets left in this state, and it does hurt the consumers. But one of the other reasons that I will be a no on this bill is that it eliminates the ground rules. It really doesn't promote competition. It contradicts free markets. And when we say, well, it's going to level the playing field, it's not really. It's going to tilt the playing field. So I would ask for a no vote on House Bill 1325.
System Minority Leader Van Winkle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And members, it's been said here at the well several times today that for generations we've been telling business that you must operate in the automotive sector in this way, A, B, and C. You have to do this. Well, let me put a year to it, members. It was actually 1937. And every law and every amendment that has been passed by this body, by the House and Senate, signed by the governor, in the last 82 years has been implemented for the purpose of protecting consumers in their transactions. This is often the second biggest purchase a person will ever make in their lives. And for 82 years, we've been saying, here are the rules of the road. And so we've had business owners from beautiful Highlands Ranch, Colorado, all four corners of the state, build their business around that model. And so it makes me a little nervous when a bill comes along and says, okay, you guys, you got to stay in that lane. You got to stay in that model. But over here, we're going to do special rules for someone else. It'd be almost like if we said, Miller Coors, you need to continue operating by the same rules that have been in place since Prohibition was lifted. But Budweiser, you can do something completely different. It creates an unlevel playing field, and members, the franchise dealer model creates an advocate in our local communities. These folks are our neighbors. They're the people helping our local softball teams. They live down the street. If something goes wrong with our vehicles, we know exactly where to go. We don't have to call some faraway call center. We just go down the street. Time and time again, local car dealers have continued to warrant and maintain customers' vehicles long after brands have gone out of place. And representative from Colorado Springs, Liston, mentioned Saturn. I mean, I think it was Zuzu, Saturn, Suzuki, Hummer, Geo, Daewoo. These manufacturers have declared bankruptcy and closed their doors, but the dealers, our local neighbors, are still there in our community. And when this happens, when a manufacturer goes out of business and there's no local dealer in our neighborhood to help people out, it shortens the life of those cars. So people, like I said, make the second biggest investment in their life in their vehicle, and all of a sudden they can't find the spare parts, they can't get the software updates that are necessary, very important in cars today. And it cuts them short on the investment that they have made, the massive investment they've made in their vehicles. My final point in argument against the bill is that the franchise dealership model provides over 24,000 direct jobs in your district and my district, 40,000 other indirect jobs in Colorado. Through the sales, service, parts, and motor vehicles, the industry delivers up to 22% of Colorado's state and local government tax base. Let me say it again. We have made the rules of the road say everyone for the last 82 years has to operate like this. And because of that model, we have 22% of our total sales tax base coming from that model, and we're saying, no, you guys keep doing that. Miller Coors, you keep operating by these rules, but Budweiser, you operate by these rules. I urge a no vote.
Representative Hansen.
Great. Thanks, members. I just want to respond quickly to a few things that came up as this part of the discussion. I want to be clear, all the consumer protection laws, the lemon laws, et cetera, absolutely equal treatment. All of these manufacturers, we clarified this in committee, are going to be treated the exact same way. There's no change in consumer protection here at all. No change at all. Everyone is having the same playing field when it comes to consumer protection. Please be clear on that point in this bill.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I agree that the consumer protections are still there, but the way they get delivered and the way they get applied are different when you are dealing with a small local business as opposed to a large corporation. And so, I do want to make sure that our small businesses and small business owners and the guys who've been playing by the rules for generations and generations, that they don't, end up having to compete against the very manufacturer that they're selling as well. And at the same time, making sure that we don't create a monopoly with the EV sales by saying that only the manufacturer can sell it, or saying that the manufacturer can sell it, and that ends up being the case, that only the manufacturer sells it. And so with that, members, I think we can put a little bit of a guardrail on this. Again, I'm supportive of this industry, but this bill I just think is a bit broad. So I move L009 and ask that it be displayed.
The amendment is before us. To the amendment, Representative Melton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So L009 says that, fine, you can have direct sales to consumers, but you are limited to 4 dealerships. So if you want Rivian to come in and sell directly to customers, that's fine. but let's not have them spread across the state. Most dealers only have 1 or 2 locations. A few of the big ones may have 3 or 4. So let's go ahead and say, fine, you can have 4 locations across the state. And then, you know, outside of that, if you want, you can then go through a dealer. But let's again make sure that we're going to what this bill was calling for, which was helping some of the small EV companies get a market share within this market, especially where they are having maybe difficulty getting the attention of some dealers. 4, I think, is more than generous. I can tell you not everybody's happy with the amendment, but, you know, sometimes you have to kind of give and take in order to make sure that you've crafted a very balanced bill. I think this is a very balanced amendment. I would ask for an aye vote.
Representative Hansen.
Thanks so much, Madam Chair. And folks, this is a really problematic amendment, and let me explain why. This, again, would take us backwards. We have dealerships right now that have way more than 4 locations. So if we're going to put this restriction on EV manufacturers, shouldn't we do it for everybody? I don't think anybody wants to move in that direction, but this is a huge problem. It would restrict a current operator and make it very difficult for new entrants to be successful in the state. So I urge a no vote on this amendment.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And actually, I think that there's a little confusion here. So currently, the only direct-to-sales, direct-to-consumer manufacturer, Tesla, only has 3 dealership locations. Now, they have multiple service center locations, and this bill doesn't touch the service centers whatsoever. So this still allows for any of the manufacturers to still have as many service centers as they want. They can still do delivery through their service centers, but they just aren't dealerships. There's a difference between the service center and the dealership. This amendment actually allows Tesla to expand beyond the 3 dealerships that they currently have. So this doesn't move us backwards, members. This, if anything, goes slightly above the status quo. Again, not everybody's happy with the amendment, and I understand that. But again, in order to find that balance, sometimes you have to give and take on both sides. So with that, members, again, I renew my request for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Representative Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And members, I rise in support of this. I think this is probably the least we can do. This puts EVs on par with what we're already seeing in the state, especially if you look at how Tesla operates. It still allows for that specific company to expand at least one more. And, you know, this is just one little guardrail that we can put in place to ensure that the franchise dealership model is not upended. As Representative Melton has said, and as Representative Van Winkle has said as well, that these are companies that have been playing by rules that have been set up for the past 80 years. And during testimony, they told us in no uncertain terms that they would be disrupted. And not only their companies would be disrupted, but the service that consumers receive would be disrupted. Okay, if that's what's going to happen, you know, as we move towards new technological innovations, that's certainly to be expected, but as it relates to what we're doing here, we should allow for a slower, smoother transition. We should allow for these franchisees and these dealerships to have the blow that they're going to face to be a little bit easier on them. And this certainly helps. It still allows these EVs to come in and sell what they want to sell. It just contains them a little bit so that we can make sure that it's not too hard on our good small businesses that contribute so much to our local communities and our districts. So please vote yes on this amendment.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L009. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. The amendment fails. To the bill. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us. Oh, Representative Liston.
Hold on. Un momento, por favor. Madam Chair. Members, so we're to the bill. You know, we're not against competition. I mean, competition is good for everybody, but what troubles me about this bill, it's basically written and the benefit for one company that has had no presence in Colorado whatsoever, ever, where we've had dealerships that, and people, when you talk about dealerships, we're really talking about people, our friends, our neighbors, our civic leaders that have invested in our communities for decades. You know, in Colorado Springs, we have the Phil Long dealerships that have been an institution in El Paso County for some 80 years, and Winslow that has been around for at least 50 or 60 in the Denver area. Gosh, you have the Schomp dealerships, you have Medved, and you know, all these other dealerships that are iconic names that have benefited our friends and our family and our neighbors with good jobs and all of the things they've done for our communities, civic minded. And then here, out of the blue, no offense against this company called Rivian, I'm not even sure how to spell it, but we have a bill that specifically is for the benefit of this one company to the detriment of the auto dealers that have played by the rules fair and square for 50, 60, 70, and 80 years. And then out of the blue, like a bolt of lightning, we have a member that brings a bill specifically to aid, comfort, and to give a distinct advantage to one manufacturer that has never done business here in Colorado. I don't understand it. It's not right. It's not fair. It's not logical. I urge a no vote on House Bill 1325. Let's play by the rules that our good dealerships have been playing by for 80 some odd years or more. I urge a no vote on 1325.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, members, and I promise I don't have any more amendments. I do appreciate the discussion that we've had today, and I really want to get to a yes on this bill. I was hoping that last amendment would have made it on, because I do believe that we should expand the market and invite and encourage more of the EV cars on our roads. But I'm not there. I'm not there without that amendment right now, and the reason why is because even though this will help that small startup, it could be used to help some of the larger manufacturers as well compete against their current dealers. You know, we have heard that Jaguar is looking at going all EV in a few years. We have seen that Ford's CEO actually came from Tesla, was a part of the battery manufacturers. He's cut down the sedan line and he's reduced a lot of their inventory in order to explore going all EV. So with this bill, if that happens, Ford could open their own dealership and compete with your local business owner. And you may say, well, you know, dealerships, they make plenty of money. If you compare a dealer to a manufacturer, that is not even apples and oranges. We're talking about a guy who is employing some people in your districts compared to a manufacturer that's making billions of dollars. That's problematic. And so I'm hoping that if the bill moves forward, there can be some additional guardrails so that way it can achieve what it's intended to do, which is help some of these smaller businesses get into the market, but at the same time, not put at risk an industry that has been around for decades, for scores. I've been waiting to use scores since I got elected, but they've been around for scores. So members, I just think, you know, a little bit more work needs to be done on this. Hopefully, if the bill moves forward, as it moves forward, there can be some guardrails to, again, achieve that intent. But for today, unfortunately, I'm going to be a no vote. I'm going to ask you to do the same.
Is there any Representative Sane?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to congratulate my two colleagues here for their perspicacity and their excellent amendments. However, I would still have to disagree with even 4. And as I mentioned earlier, this bill brings up every cliche to mind, camel's nose in the tent, slippery slope. But I would call this the electric slide into a monopoly. So when you have an OEM or original equipment manufacturer who can have one lane down to the consumer, again, I'm going to urge you to vote no on this bill because I think dealerships serve an important purpose. They're not just the middlemen. They have relationships with their customers. They have relationships with the community. They are there as a brick and mortar building to serve the customer for whatever goes wrong with that vehicle. They do serve more purposes than just that for new vehicles, however, but I'll keep it to that point. And that franchises serve a very, very valuable purpose. One, it satisfies the American dream for so many Americans who can own a business as a franchisee. They're part of a system that's successful. Some of these, well, a dealership's never a turnkey operation, but they're part of a larger system than themselves. They're invested in that particular brand, and they want to make sure that that brand succeeds and that they are selling excellent vehicles to their customer. When somebody is working for an OEM, I don't believe they're going to have that same level of dedication, especially when you've got, and not saying this is not a great idea as far as a business idea, but I've seen a lot of these electric cars being sold in malls. They can rent these spaces out and then move on. A dealership is going to be there for years and years and years and years and years. And they sponsor your child's Little League games. They sponsor community cleanups. They are a community member and they are going to be there. So when you allow one OEM to do something that the rest cannot, you're putting somebody else at an unfair disadvantage, and it's your neighbor. Urge a no vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1325. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. The bill passes. To Mr. Rando, please read the title of House Bill 1264.
House Bill 1264 by Representatives Roberts and Wilson, also Senators Winter and Donovan, concerning pragmatic efficiency of the Conservation Easement Tax Credit Program in connection therewith increasing the transparency of the program.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 19-1264 and the Appropriations and Rural Affairs and Ag reports.
To the Appropriations Report. Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the Appropriations Committee, we added several amendments. One stripped all of the appropriation, or removed the increase in the valuation, so that brought the fiscal note down significantly, and then added an appropriation for the COMAP program that has been requested. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the Appropriations Report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The report is adopted. To the Rural Affairs Report, Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Rural Affairs and Ag report simply clarified the working group and changed the language to accommodate the new composite of the working groups, and I'd ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the Rural Affairs Report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This particular bill, House Bill 19-1264, deals with conservation easements. Conservation easements have been around for quite some time. There have been some challenges that have been experienced in that, but this bill is moving forward. The conservation easement piece is one in which the owner agrees to that particular contract. There's no eminent domain. It's consensual. And what Representative Roberts and I did with this bill was not to debate what has happened in the past, but to make things better in the future. And I know that Representative Lewis has battled this for longer than she probably wants to remember in her part of the state. And in fact, there are three major issues that are covered in this bill that were a direct result of Representative Lewis's efforts. My partner in crime on this bill, Representative Roberts, will be covering some other points about the bill, but three things I'd like to point out is one, that it extends it for 7 years, and that means it'll sunset, so it'll be coming back. That's one of the things I think is valuable. Second thing is that we have addressed Representative Lewis's concerns in co-map, easement extinguishment, and last but by no means least, a warning form for landowners so that they definitely know what they're getting into. And the third thing is that we created a higher level of efficiency and transparency. So with that, I'll turn that over to my co-sponsor.
Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, conservation easements are an important tool that we have in the state of Colorado to protect everything that we love about our great state. Its natural beauty, its beautiful vistas, and it's really truly one of the ways that we can preserve these things for the next generations to come. So conservation easements have been in place for a while. Basically what this bill is the program is set to sunset, and so we need to pass this bill to reauthorize the program for 7 more years. We'll come back and do this process again in 7 years. But what we've also done in this bill is make significant steps to strengthening the program, making people more accountable, and making sure that some of the alleged abuses will not occur, alleged abuses of the past will not occur in the future. So there will be a working group that will be convened out of this, appointed by both members of the majority and minority parties in both chambers, so that they can work with the Division of Conservation to address past concerns and look forward. But at the end of the day, a conservation easement is a personal decision made by a private landowner concerning their own private property rights. If they want to enter into this agreement, it is a completely voluntary thing they can do. If they don't want to enter into the agreement, they don't have to. We heard testimony in committee from both sides of that decision, people who have entered conservation easements and who have seen the benefits of such, and the people who considered it, but after long consideration determined it wasn't right for them. That's all we want to keep doing in the state of Colorado, allow this tool to be in existence. I think this bill makes the program significantly stronger and sets it up for many years of success. I'd ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Landgraf. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Roberts, I agree. These conservation easements are something that people choose to do. They don't have to do. The problem is when they choose to do it, they do affect the people around them. I have fire districts who are on the verge of not being able to provide fire service because they don't get the taxes that they need to function to cover their expenses because of some of the districts. And I'll admit, I don't fully understand all this, but I've had a great teacher sitting over here explaining them to me. So I wish there was some way to find a balance so that people who want these easements for the best of reasons to protect the land and keep it the way it is still are accountable to other people and have to pay for the services that they are provided.
Representative Will.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
Honor to serve with you.
And I rise in strong support of 1264. In my past and my experience, I've dealt with multiple conservation easements. I see the value in them. I see how many landowners easements have helped to stay in business. Number one, it's a private property right. If I want to put my land in an easement, that's totally up to me. It is a private property right. And I can tell you, in all my dealings with conservation easements, I've never seen a landowner with his arm twisted behind their back to sign on. And I know there's been issues with some of these in the past. I know this bill's to fix some of those, but I stand in strong support of them. And they can be critical for wildlife habitats, maintaining open space, critical winter ranges, especially for big game on the western slope, huge. Solitude areas for wildlife, maintaining migration corridors, connectivity to transitional range from spring to summer, fall to winter, all those type of ranges. The connectivity, some of these easements, and that's why a lot of the agencies like CPW go after specific conservation easements is to maintain that connectivity. So I know it's also been, especially with sage grouse, a lot of these easements that have been done is protecting a species like that from being listed as threatened or endangered. So I stand in strong, strong support of this easement bill 1264. Thank you.
Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to respond briefly to the question from Representative Landgraf. When your land is under an easement, you still pay property taxes.
Representative Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate being here this morning. It's still morning. Good morning. I'm glad to be here to talk conservation easements one more time. And yes, I do appreciate the bill sponsors. I did ask them to run one amendment. We didn't get that done, but we are communicating, and I appreciate them looking at my bills and taking some of the wording out of there. It's unfortunate that we can't get everything we want, but as you know, if we all agreed, we wouldn't need to be here for 120 days. Representative Roberts mentioned about the sunset review in the bill, and I'm just going to dissect this bill just a little bit, and I have a few amendments. And in the bill, the sunset review would not be until 2026. A year ago, I stood before you, and line by line, I gave you the statute violations the Conservation Easement Oversight Commission had. Line by line, I read that page and a half that was in small print. Line by line, I read the statute violations that were in the Conservation Easement Oversight Commission. So now we have a sunset review. This was the hiccup. This was the shutdown. This was the reason why this bill is still coming with this sunset review, because we couldn't agree. Last year, on the last day of the session, we were still having a conference committee out there in the hall, down the little room in the hall. Then we were supposed to have meetings. Guess what? Didn't happen until later in the summer, one. Guess what? Later in the fall. Then what happens? December 1? It's here. We got to do something. Ladies and gentlemen, the conservation easements that we talk about, how they're protecting habitat, how they're saving wildlife, the feeding frenzy that has been going on from landowners in Colorado isn't exactly what they sound like. We have been on a feeding frenzy for private property in Colorado. I represent 9 counties, and out of those 9 counties, 80% of those harmed by conservation easements live there. Every day, I work conservation easements. And every day, I think we're going to get just a little bit closer to making this come forward and do something right. Those landowners that were harmed, they were harmed in a way that you wouldn't understand. You just paid your taxes. I'll tell you about that. They're taxpayers. And on April the 15th, they had to file their taxes. And guess what happens? If you owe the IRS money and you don't pay on the 15th, they want your money. But they want a penalty and they want an interest. They want interest money. And that's exactly what happened to these landowners in Colorado. This CEOC that they brag about that's doing such great work, they wait until the last minute. And then they say, oh, by the way, your conservation easement has been disallowed. Those landowners spent that money that they got from that conservation easement. But the kicker on this is you're going to pay a penalty and you're going to pay a fee and you're going to pay some interest, because it's been several years now. And we're going to pull that. Guess what? The conservation easement stays on the land. Those people paid their money back. Are they going to get their fees and penalties and interest back? I don't think so. So the infinite wisdom of the Conservation Easement Oversight Commission, headed up by now your Division of Conservation leader, Mark Weston. This is where we're at. He's the gentleman that refused one of the conservation easements. You've heard from the Ginses from northeast Colorado. You've heard from them. They were harmed.
Representative Lewis to the bill.
And they were told, thank you, Madam Chair. They were told that they had to pay this all back. And it was the Conservation Easement Oversight Commission. So with that, Madam Chair, I have L009, an amendment that I would like to bring for 1264. We will get it displayed and we'll talk about the amendment. Thank you.
L009 is displayed to the amendment. Representative Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment is a simple amendment, and I like those kind because you can actually go to the bill, look it up the page, and you can see what we're doing. This amendment just changes the dates from 2026 to 2022. So in other words, instead of it being out till 2026, we're going to sunset review this in 3 years. I thought it was a good compromise on my part. I felt like that I was trying to work with them. And so therefore, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I support this amendment and I hope you will too. Thank you.
Representative Lewis, did you move the amendment?
I did. I moved L009, which substitutes the date of the sunset review.
Thank you. Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I'd ask for a no vote.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L009. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. The amendment fails. To the bill, Representative Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the other aspects about conservation easements are open space. And a year ago, well, ever since I've been here, this is my 3rd year, I've carried a conservation easement bill. The first year I carried it with Representative Becker. He had been working with Senator Sonnenberg. So we've had several conservation easement bills like 1264 in a row for several years. Last year I offered 3 and I put them in separate bills. This year I just rolled it all into one. One of the things that you all want, everybody here in the House, is more open space. You all want a place to go. You all want another park. I found that out last year in Senate Bill 143. In fact, we appropriated funding to kind of get started on another state park. So you want more places to go. Well, your state of Colorado is funding this. Your state of Colorado is giving money to government and the feeding frenzy from land trusts to do this. The state of Colorado, the federal government, is there. So one of the things as a conservative Republican that I worry about is growth in government. Because I live in an area where the government has came and they said, we want your land. And we will get it. You know how many times around Pinyon Canyon Maneuver Site they've said, we want your land and we will get it? Well, they did once. In 1983, they took 285,000 acres, and they've been back since. And it may happen again because it's not over. So we have a lot of conservation easements that are up against federal land. Department of Defense is one of them. In fact, Pinyon Canyon Maneuver Site is part of Fort Carson, which is one of the 19 military installations across the United States that is in what they call Army compatible use buffers. So you wonder, what is that and what does it have to do with this bill? Conservation easements are part of that buffer, and they push that. The partner to the Department of Defense is the Nature Conservancy, and they push conservation easements. But now they're already buying land. They're buying so much land in Los Animas County you can't keep up in fee title. But the land against federal land, all this money is going towards conservation easements and open space. So with that, Madam Chair, I bring to you L006, and I move L006 and ask for it to be displayed, please.
L006 is before us. To the amendment, Representative Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment talks about the money that's appropriated by GOCO. And you thought, well, GOCO, they put in bathrooms at parks, city parks. They create city parks. It's great. They've done a lot of good work for a lot of years. In fact, I attended a breakfast down at the Warwick about 2 months ago about getting kids outside into parks. It's great. That's what we're supposed to do. Get those kids out there, get some sunshine, get some exercise. That's what you think your GOCO is paying for. You didn't know that GOCO was paying for a lot of these conservation easements and for fee title for land trusts. So this amendment would bring that land that is next to government land or has been funded by your GOCO open to the public. With that, I move the amendment, but I also urge an aye vote.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Lewis, for that. So in listening to what you were saying, Representative Lewis, I have a question for you. Representative Lewis, I have a question for you. You're talking about, when you were presenting this amendment, this frenzy of taking over the land and the people are buying the land so fast is just crazy. Who's selling the land? Is it the landowner? Is that a choice, or are they confiscating the land?
Representative Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The amendment that is up is talking about the land that is next to federal-owned land, Army-compatible use buffers, DOD, Forest Service, or BLM.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Lewis. I understand that, but in your introduction to that, you were saying they're just buying this land up hand over fist. Who's selling the land? Is it the choice of the landowner, or is it the government with eminent domain taking that property?
Representative Lewis.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. We have an amendment on the floor. When I talked about the bill earlier, I talked about land that is being bought up, and that land is being bought up by federal government, state government. I mentioned about the state park that they're pushing for, and it is also private ownership. Representative Wilson is going to want me to allude to the fact that conservation easements are between private landowners and private land trusts. But you have to remember there's a little nexus there called the federal government. There's a little nexus that they put their money into that land trust. There's a little nexus there that now we have GOCO funding this. So that's what the amendment's about.
Representative Beckman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I stand in support of this amendment. Representative Lewis and I have had a lot of conversations about my hometown, Trinidad, Colorado, Los Animas County, but also what we have done in the Arapahoe County Open Space Program that I was very involved with as a county commissioner. Arapahoe County was one of the few counties that didn't have an open space funding mechanisms back in 2003, when that county was one of the fastest growing counties in the nation. And we actually, even the conservative commissioners, took a question to the voters for a sales tax. And it passed by 65%, and we brought in an amazing amount of money, $20 million a year, to start an open space program and to purchase buffers and open space and riparian areas and protect wildlife across the Arapahoe County. We did great things with Highline Canal, Cherry Creek Trail, Kiowa Creek, Rich Mill Ranch, and we worked very, very, very closely with GOCO and Trust for Public Lands. Actually, we've preserved 15,000 acres of land in a pretty short period of time. Unlike GOCO, our sales tax for open space had a sunset on it, which meant that after 10 years, we had to go back to the voters. And that time the economy wasn't as vibrant, and we knew that we had to do massive surveys and really kind of understand what people liked about our open space program and what they didn't like. And so I know what the citizens of Arapahoe County expect out of GOCO money, Trust for Public Lands, and Arapahoe County open space. When we went out to do our statistical survey, public access trails and interconnected countywide trail system came in at 85%. People really wanted access. Protect and preserve water quality, preserve urban and rural open space and natural areas, protect wildlife habitat. But by far the most was public access and trail connectivity, followed by the desire to protect natural areas and wildlife. We actually, when we went back out to the voters, what we did was changed our model to put more maintenance, because we had purchased a lot of land, buy lost land, because we don't want to buy all the land available in Arapahoe County, and really changed the model from doing a lot of conservative easements to doing more direct, fee simple, and more strategic purchases of land, but always working with a component of public access. And it might not be complete public access, it can be limited public access, but it is public dollars. Yes, you always have a willing buyer. Sometimes it's a pretty good deal for the willing buyer, and it's public dollars. And so we felt very strongly as we went back out, knowing that it would be very difficult to get this tax reinstated, which it did pass. It passed by about 55%. If GOCO was to go back out to the voters, I wonder what their model would look like. Would it say that we were buying land without public access? Or would
Representative
they...
Beckman, to the amendment.
Well, this amendment is about public access to land connected to federal land. And that's my issue, that in Arapahoe County, I know what my constituents would want. They want public access to property. It's paid for by government land. It's a different way of negotiating some of these land conservation easements, fee simple, or however you purchase the land, but it is public dollars. There should be a direct public benefit, maybe not complete access, but hiking trails or some type of access. We need healthy communities and an open space that supports a healthy economy, but it also should really be involved with having people get out in our beautiful Colorado open space. So I'd ask you to vote yes on Representative Lewis and my amendment.
Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd ask for a no vote. I understand, or I appreciate the argument, but what this amendment literally would do is say the government is controlling how you should use your private property rights. I don't think that's the role of government. I'd ask for a no vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L006. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. The amendment fails. To the bill, Representative Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since we started talking about the bill and about land ownership, and as a land use candidate, I can tell you the land ownership, that's how people in agriculture make living. If they don't have any land or a place to do their work on, raise their livestock, farm, they have nothing. And if they're being controlled, they have nothing. And this is something that has to be brought out. We have had, and I mentioned the feeding frenzy, and I'm going to talk about that again a little bit. Because the feeding frenzy has happened when the infinite wisdom of the state capitol, when we had legislators that put forth to triple the tax credits back in 2003, there was a feeding frenzy. There were all kinds of new land trusts that popped up. They went out to landowners, taxpayers, and they talked them into conservation easements. Yes, it was a two-way deal, and it is their private property. They have that right to do it or not do it. But it was in the way they did it and what has happened since. That's the point I want to make. We have had a feeding frenzy over controlling things, controlling the land. Dave Foreman from Earth First once said, "Why buy the land in fee title when a conservation easement can do the same?" So back to this bill, 1264. We're talking about conservation easements, is a perfect time to talk about land ownership. And yes, it does take a willing seller and a willing buyer. And that willing seller or willing buyer can be a nonprofit, they can be a conservation group, they can be a land trust, but they can also be an egregious landowner, egregious one that wants it all. And what they do is they get a conservation easement every time they buy land. And they take the money they get from the conservation easement, and it's kind of funny, theirs never get in default or disallowed, and then they go buy more. So with that, Madam Chair, I move L005 and ask for it to be displayed.
The amendment is properly before us. To the amendment, Representative Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I did move L005. This is saying that on or after January 1, if you want to buy land, that's fine, but you can't put it into a conservation easement for 5 years. This will slow down the train a little bit. And the reason why we need to slow down the train is because we still haven't fixed what we did to the landowners from 98 forward. Everybody, when I got here, was telling everyone that it was no big deal. There were just 2 bad appraisers that happened in southeast Colorado, and we fixed it. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, we haven't fixed it yet, and I've been here 3 years. We're still working on it. This amendment would make them own the land for 5 years. You just heard Representative Beckman talk about growing up in Trinidad. The Nature Conservancy just bought 19,600 acres for $25 million, not their money. GOCO money, Colorado Parks and Wildlife money. They put in about $2 million. That was it. And then they flipped the land. They got a conservation easement immediately. It was all part of the deal. All part of the deal. This amendment idea came up at a meeting I was at between land trusts and landowners about 2 months ago. I had to hurry off to a meeting in Lyman. And one of the older gentlemen there that had trouble with conservation easements came up with this idea. He said, you know, Representative Lewis, they shouldn't be able to do that until they own the land for at least 5 years. So therefore, I urge you to vote yes on this amendment because it would stop some of this that's happening in the rural parts or maybe along the Front Range here. I'm not certain, but I know it's happening out there, and I urge you to vote yes on the amendment.
Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd ask for a no vote. This is another amendment that chips away at private property rights.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Beckman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I stand in support of this amendment because honestly, it's a transparency amendment, and the taxpayers of Colorado deserve to know, and this would give them a little bit of time to understand what is actually happening. This is new news to me. I didn't understand what they were doing with some of the conservation or the purchases in that land around Trinidad, Colorado, because my hometown, it is pretty shocking of the massive amounts of land that they are purchasing in that area. So I support this amendment.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L005. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. The amendment fails. To the bill, Representative Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things that I mentioned to you earlier in the bill in 1264 was the fact that last year we also had a similar working group. We did similar stuff. In fact, it was decided on in last year's bill, 1295, some of the same wording, similar stuff. Going to have a working group. Well, I support that. I support that part of the bill. I think it's wonderful that they're willing to have people work towards getting something right. And actually, I had 2 or 3 little ideas. They put them in separate amendments, so I'll quickly go to and move L013, which I had 2 or 3 little things I'd like to tweak about the amendment. And I hope that Representative Roberts and Wilson will look at this. All this says is
Okay,
that
Representative Lewis, the amendment is properly before us. To the amendment, Representative Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And it just states that they will meet 3 times with the landowners before December 31st. So if they were to meet 3 times, this new working group, then they could go forward with what they need to do. Otherwise, it's just going to be like the last working group that waited till late summer into the fall, and then we were here. So this is a simple amendment, and I think that it would be great if all the House could agree to it. I hope you vote yes.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just one quick question, Representative Lewis, because I like the amendment. Do you know how this would affect the fiscal note? Would it affect the fiscal note at all? Do you know?
Representative Lewis.
Thank you for that question. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that question, Representative Wilson. You're the bill sponsor. You'd have to tell me. The fiscal note only showed the mapping, the money you were appropriating for COMAP and that kind of stuff. Those landowners will come to you. I mean, you're going to have these meetings anyway, so why not have it with the landowners and get the skinny on what's going on? Because I can't even begin to bring all that to you from what's gone on.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Lewis, I do appreciate the spirit of the amendment. I have a problem with a few of the words, so if you want to, we can work on an amendment, but I'm not opposed. I'm opposed to the way this amendment's worded, but not the idea. So I'd ask for a no vote on L13, but we can work on something.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L013. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. The amendment fails. To the bill, Representative Lewis.
And they're hurrying me because I promised I had just a few amendments, and I did. They were like that one that were just little one-liners, but they put them in 3 amendments.
Could I have one of these?
You can have that. Thank you. And thank you for them at least being willing to look at that, because we have had a time going forward, and I was wanting to make sure that we went forward in a way and actually got something done this time. When we talk back about the bill, we talk a little bit about DORA. DORA is the one that houses the conservation easements. Mr. Mark Weston is the head of the Division of Conservation. That was something that came out of 1291 last year. And, but one of the things that we've never talked about down here at the well, one of the things we've never brought up, I've never brought up, is about tax brokering. So when you get a conservation easement tax credit, someone has to sell that tax credit for you, and they're called tax brokers. So conservation easement tax credits are all part of this bill, all part of conservation easements, and that's why you have a Conservation Easement Oversight Commission. They review all of this stuff, but we haven't talked about tax brokers. Tax brokers are people, I don't even think they have to be certified. I'm sure they're certified in selling real estate, but they get a percentage. So the day of the hearing in Ag and Rural Affairs, I asked, what percentage do you get? Well, that particular woman, she said she got 5% of that conservation easement. Well, the people in Lamar, Prowers County, tell me it's 10. Then I heard another number that was 20%. So with that, Madam Chair, I would like to offer L008 and ask for it to be displayed, and I will hand this in.
The amendment is properly displayed. To the amendment, Representative Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This particular amendment talks about the tax brokering, and it would transfer a percentage, a fee to DORA, deposited into DORA for these people that have been harmed. I felt like it was only fair, if we're really seriously going to go forward with this working group, to have a plan. And I thought, well, here at the Capitol, here we are at the end of session, we have 8 days left. Are you going to go find money here? Heavens no. But those tax brokers could share their fees with this group. And this group would help them, whoever's going to be on this working group, a little farther down the road. They would have some forward thinking about how they're going to come up with money to help these harmed landowners. You've heard about the harmed landowners. You've heard these people come here. Mrs. Hickson, the Genses, several other people that have come from eastern Colorado. We even heard from some people from the western slope. A gentleman by the name of Mr. Guire that's fighting some right now. This isn't old, this is new, since last year. So this is just a simple solution. I urge you to look at the amendment and vote yes.
Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the type of issue that the working group will look at. This amendment, I believe, is a little too complex to do on the fly. I did not see this beforehand. So I'll ask for a no vote now, and the working group will consider this.
Is there a Representative Callan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm down here today to talk about this amendment that's been proposed. There have been a lot of damages done. You know, I think this program has some real potential. It has shown some potential. But with the damage that's in the past, it's hard to build the future on crumbled stone. That's the foundation we've got right now. If we can solidify the foundation, in other words, where we came from, there are some terrible stories, whether they're the person's fault or the state's fault or whatever. But I've been down here before and have said that you and I have to keep our word to one another, because that's all we have here is our word. Yet when it came time for the state of Colorado to keep its word, it refused to keep its word and said, pay me back for the tax credits that you've been given. That's caused some incredible chaos out in the country, believe me, folks. And it's still out there. People did pay back the tax credits. Yet the conservation easement still stays on that land. They still have a partner that didn't pay to have a partnership in that piece of ground or in that operation. That's not right. You and I both agree with that. If you make a transaction, you keep a transaction. If you make a transaction and it can't be kept, people go back to where they started. That didn't happen with this program. This amendment does something about helping us figure out a way that we can fix some of the damage that's been done. It's a very small amount of money, but it is something, and it shows that the state of Colorado is moving towards those people that have been injured. Today, I would ask you, colleagues, please vote yes on this amendment.
Representative Pelton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I wholeheartedly agree with my colleague, Representative Catlin. This bill I heard in committee. I'm new this year, so I like this bill. from here moving forward. But this amendment is really great because the Ginses that are in my district are some of those people that have been harmed. We need to do something to start helping those people, and this amendment would go a long ways towards starting that process. So I'm in full support of the amendment.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L008. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no? No! The amendment fails. To the bill, Representative Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and we're going to have a wrap up here pretty quick. I appreciate the bill writers and helping me to get through some of these ideas. You have to realize I get all these emails and we try to fit through the ones that we think will work. And all the amendments I've brought forward have been from that process. But we have included in the bill the two bill sponsors about the mapping. And the mapping was the first thing that I was really interested in, the database and mapping. In fact, when I came up with that idea of the database 2 years ago by myself, people thought, ooh, that ought to be a simple deal. Database, that's great. Because my point was, how do you fix something if you don't know what you have? So to me, the mapping needs to happen. And yes, there are some maps out there already by COMAP. And yes, there is the Colorado Heritage Program. There's some stuff already done, but we have already proven that some of that information is not correct. In Prowers County, Benton County, some of that mapping is not correct. So in the bill states that COMAP will be the mapping source. COMAP is sponsored by groups like the Nature Conservancy, GoCo. So, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I want to go out and do a map or even a study, and I'm funded by this person over here. Do you trust me to come and get a good study? I'm funded by this group over here. Well, they don't trust them. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I bring you L007 and ask for it to be displayed.
The amendment is properly displayed. To the amendment, Representative Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment would take the money appropriated out for COMAP, and I believe it got funded this morning, to send it out to the counties. The counties are already starting to do this. Send it out to the county clerks of those counties. In committee that day, when the bill was heard, 1264, we heard from some people that said their county had already done this work. So I believe that the money should go out to the counties. Have them submit their information to DORA. Have them submit that. Send the money out to the counties. Now, you're going to say, well, do all counties have conservation easements? I believe so. I don't know that answer, but I'll guarantee someone does. Those county clerks know. So if they have conservation easements, they will get a part of the pie of the $250,000 that's being appropriated for COMAP. I don't believe that being funded, the map being funded by the Nature Conservancy, GoCo, and others is going to make for a fair way. This is fair. This gets it out to those people that work their county. They know what's going on in their county. Those county clerks are very proficient. Get it out to the county. I urge an aye vote.
Any further discussion? Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I'd urge a no vote on this amendment. First of all, the mapping is run by the Colorado State University, CSU. Second of all, we're funding, the state government is funding the map. That's what the bill includes, is the appropriation of $250,000, the state government. And dispersing this to the counties would be incredibly expensive. We don't have the counties down here asking for this obligation. It would cost way more than $250,000. The most efficient, cheapest, and transparent way is to do it the way that it is written in the bill. I'd ask for a no vote.
Representative Beckman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I support this amendment because of a meeting I attended with Representative Lewis, probably about the first couple of months I was a legislator. And it was the audit of the conservation easements from the state, and they were identifying some pretty significant issues. But at that time, CSU had brought up the maps. They were very proud of the maps they had. And I watched Representative Lewis point out all the errors in the maps that they were not knowledgeable about. This had been, a lot of money had gone into this, and she just circled areas throughout the entire state of Colorado that was wrong on the map because they didn't have the information. They had one piece of the information. I do think counties are probably the most knowledgeable about their conservation easements, their parks, their trails, and where the properties are to be able to have a correct map. But I just know that at that one meeting, the map was shown with a lot of pride, and someone that really knows the area was able to identify many, many flaws in it. And so I support this amendment, and I think that it would be moving us in the right direction.
Any for Representative Pelton?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And in our county county assessor and the clerk both have excellent mapping programs. They're already doing a lot of this work. I think this would be a very good amendment to add on to this bill. So I'm full support of this amendment. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L007. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. The amendment fails. To the bill, Representative Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I did have one more amendment, but I'm going to not bring it because I promised Representative Kennedy I would not bring too many, and I apologize. I tried to talk fast. A lot of the amendments I wanted and ended up being individual amendments, and I thought they were going to be together. So I'll wrap up about the Conservation Easement Bill 1264 and let you know that I do appreciate the work that Representative Roberts and Wilson have done. I do appreciate the patience that you have all had listening to me for 3 years. I appreciate the understanding and the learning, the education that you have been on. And for those of you that are new here, this is a huge problem for the state of Colorado. Conservation easements aren't for everyone. In fact, I have 6 children. 2 of them help me work the ranch, and at any minute, if I needed help from one or the other, they'd be there in a heartbeat. Last week, while I was here, my daughter that's the pilot for United was down there mowing my mustard weed at my ranch house so we could have Easter on Sunday. But those 6 children are ready to step forward and do what I did when my dad's health got bad. And it's because of those 6 children and a whole pack of grandkids, I would never, ever, never rely on a land trust or someone that I didn't know to control my property. My dad didn't do it. I'm not going to do it. There will be debt. When my late husband and I bought the ranch from my dad, it was debt. Debt up to the yin-yang, in fact. In the 80s, cattle markets went downhill in a hurry. Guess who had a whole bunch of yearlings? Yearling steers, my dad. And he just about went down with them. He held on, but his health got bad. In '91, my late husband and I bought that ranch. We have been encircled by conservation easements ever since, to the point we can't even do wind energy if we wanted to. Transmission lines do not go through there because it stops development, and I understand that. Ladies and gentlemen, there's still a lot of work that we need to do on conservation easements here in Colorado. If somebody tells you it was just 2 bad actors, 2 bad appraisers, I know those 2 gentlemen, those older gentlemen, and you know what? They're both good people. They thought they were doing what was right. They thought they were helping these landowners. And in fact, they were. They were doing everything under the law. These people have been harmed. These ranchers and farmers of Colorado. When I talk about a feeding frenzy, the only people that pay the fees are them. Land trusts don't pay fees. Tax brokers make money. It's all about the money. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I would not do that to my children. Some people have because they really thought it was the right way, and that is their way with what they want to do with their land. But House Bill 1264 isn't quite there yet. I will be a no vote, even though I like the working group. I don't believe COMAP is right. Several things in there I don't believe are right yet. We will continue to work. But when I have calls from county commissioners saying, Representative Lewis, thank you. Thank you for what you've done for land use. Our counties are worried about not having any more land left to develop on. Our counties are considering no net loss of private property and not allowing these. We still have a lot of work to do, Colorado. Hang with us. Let's keep working. Let's go back to those landowners. Let's do something right for them, the taxpayers. Vote no on this bill, and let's get on down the road. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Representative Will.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In all due respect to my colleague, Representative Lewis, and I appreciate her tenacity on this and her work. I just want to say that these easements don't take this tool away for conservation. It's needed. I know a lot of landowners that have got into these, that it's leaving a legacy for them and their family to leave these properties undeveloped into perpetuity. So, as all due respect, to Representative Lewis and some of her amendments, but I stand in strong support of 1264. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Representative Valdez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to thank the bill sponsor for bringing House Bill 1264. Remember, this is another option for our farmers and ranchers to preserve the land, the water, and for the next generation. And I stand in support of this bill. Yes, there might not have been all the right decisions in the past, but we need to make those corrected now, and we need to move forward. And I ask for your support, and I want to thank the bill sponsors for bringing this bill forward. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, colleagues, for taking the time to listen to this bill. The challenge that we've got here, looking back, is tough. And I can't imagine what some of the constituents that Representative Lewis represents have gone through in that. But I've learned in riding my mule in the high country, it's hard to see where you're going if you're always looking back. And this bill is about moving forward. And we worked very hard with Representative Lewis. I don't know how many of you have had the opportunity to get 3 things in somebody else's bill that you've been pushing for on bills that weren't successful. I've never done that, so we worked really hard on that. We heard a lot about the frenzy of taking over the land. It sounds like the piranhas in a tank. But the thing we're missing on this is that, as Representative Lewis said, there's 2 groups, buyers, sellers. The landowners are the sellers. They enter into this agreement, and some of them work and some of them don't, and I've bought things in my life that I thought I got a good deal on and it didn't work out so well. Other times I ran like I stole it. So as we look at this, I want you to understand, colleagues, as you vote on this bill, no one, I repeat, no one, has had their land taken without the permission of the landowner. It's a two-way deal. So as I look at this, I want to share with you, we can either look backward or we can start moving forward. This bill moves us forward. Representative Lewis said, let's get on down the road. Let's do that. Let's start moving where we need to go, because this bill deals with transparency, efficiency, protection for participants. It does some good things. It's a good bill, and I urge a yes vote.
Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Wilson, just wanted to thank you for your work on this bill. Representative Lewis, thank you for your work on this bill. Parts of what you wanted, Representative Lewis, are in this bill, and I'm thankful for that. This is a huge collaboration and a huge step moving forward. I'd ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1264. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The bill passes. Mr. Majority Leader.
Madam Chair, great job today. I move that the committee rise and beg leave to sit again. Rise, report progress, and beg leave to sit again.
Seeing no objection, the committee will rise and report again. Rise, report progress, and we'll come back later in the day.
Yeah, don't say that.
The House will come back to order. Mr. Randall.
Madam Speaker, your Committee of the Whole reports as follows. It has risen reports progress and begs leave to sit again later today.
The committee will sit again at 5:30 p.m. Majority Leader Gurnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, members, for your work today. Committees will meet at 1:30, and we will come back close to 5:30 or when they adjourn to continue working on the floor tonight.
Seeing that, do you want to put us in recess?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House stand in recess until later today.
Seeing no objection, the House will be in recess till later today.